Chapter 1975. Arbor's raised hands were still hanging in the air. She looked at the crown prince who was running away and shouted angrily, "What an unromantic guy. It's rare for me to be so merciful and give you a chance to serve me closely. It's fine if you don't take it, but you actually ran away. Idiot." Arbor jumped into the tub and leaned against the side of the tub. She stared at the closed door and snorted. "Can't you just use your fire spirit to heat it up? Why did you look for hot water? Hubby, the water is too cold. Are you trying to freeze me to death?" Prince Mo ran out of the door to breathe in the fresh air. His mind cleared up a little. When he heard Jojo calling him from inside the room, he became hot-headed and hurriedly pushed open the door and walked in. He closed the door and went behind the screen to take a look. The little fellow was completely submerged in the water, only her little head poking out from the side of the tub. Her beautiful black hair floated on the surface of the water, soft and curly like loose seaweed. "Jojo, where's the hot water you brought?" The little fellow glanced at him with disdain. "Emolien, who the hell remembers what hot water is? Heat it up." Arbor propped her little chin on the tub and looked at the man with sparkling eyes. A few round beads of water hung on her tipsy little face. Emolien hastily walked up, and a cluster of fiery red flames flashed past his palm. Arbor immediately felt the temperature of the water in the tub slowly rise. She snorted with satisfaction. "Hubby, didn't you want to bathe me?" A certain someone leaned against the tub and blinked at the man. Emolien felt like his heart was about to jump out of his chest. How could this little fellow be so lovable? Prince Mo raised his hand to pinch her smooth little face and gritted his teeth. "Baby, don't play with fire, okay? I'm not playing with fire." Miss Chow held a handful of water with her fingers and gently flicked it. The water droplets splashed onto Emolien's face. "This is clearly water." Prince Mo gritted his teeth again and reached out to hug her. "If you piss me off, you'll have to bear the consequences." Surprisingly, the little guy stretched out his two little hands in an easygoing manner, with a hug expression on his face. Her adorable little face was stained with tiny droplets of water. Under the dim candlelight, the little fellow's eyes were blurred, causing the crown prince to be in a trance for a moment. He subconsciously reached out to hold her soft and smooth little hand. With this touch, his entire body quivered and his vision became clearer. He quickly let go of his wife's hand and covered her head with a silk handkerchief. His Highness the Crown Prince, who had always been decisive in killing, was unexpectedly unable to speak clearly for the first time. You wash it yourself. I'm going back to my room to rest. Don't play with the water. Go to bed early after bathing. I'll see you tomorrow." Swish, bang. The door was slammed shut. Arbor's finger brushed against the surface of the water. He propped up his chin with one hand and huffed. "You have evil intentions, but no guts." Not long after, Arbor climbed out of the tub. He wiped himself clean and put on a clean set of clothes. He opened the window and glanced next door, his eyes rolling. Knock, knock, knock. Prince Mo had just tidied himself up and sat at the table to drink some water when he heard someone knocking on his door. It couldn't be his wife. Right Mo Yin got up and opened the door. A faint fragrance assailed his nostrils. The little fellow took advantage of the situation and threw herself into his arms. Prince Mo was immediately enveloped in a soft and warm embrace. Chapter 1976. "Jojo, you're drunk." The crown prince finally understood why the little fellow was acting so strangely today. "I'm not drunk." The little fellow waved her little hand with a proud expression. "How could I be drunk? I only drank 3 cups of fruit wine." "That's right. You drank 3 cups of fruit wine, and you're drunk. Don't deny it." The crown prince hurriedly carried the little fellow into the room and kicked the door shut while he was at it. "Hubby," Miss Chow kept blowing warm air into his ear, her eyes blurred. "Why are you so useless? You were scared just now." "I'm not scared." Hearing his wife say that, as a man, how could Prince Mo admit that he was scared? "Then why aren't you looking at me?" The little fellow reached out to hold his handsome face and leaned over. Her little face rubbed against the side of his face as she breathed softly. "HM? Hubby, look, I'll be 16 after the new year. I'm 16, I'm 16. She kept whispering into his ear as she exhaled. That Ahua from our village was already a mother of 2 children at the age of 16. Classmate Emol Yin's mood at this moment changed from extreme suppression to gradually surging, and then to this very moment. She wanted to throw caution to the wind. No, his little wife had already sent out such an invitation. How could he disappoint his wife? Wife, this husband understands what you mean. Although the time and place of the consummation was a bit off. However, since the time had come and his wife had invited him so enthusiastically again and again, if he still didn't go, wouldn't that be recklessly wasting a gift from heaven and not knowing what was good for him? Baby, wait for me here. Prince Mo excitedly placed his little wife on the bed and kissed her hard. Then he turned around and took out a pair of red candles from his inner world. His Highness, who always carried a pair of red candles with him, quickly lit the wedding candles. Since we're going to consummate the marriage, then we can't be too casual, right? No matter how simple and crude it is, the wedding candles can't be missing. When the crown prince finished what he was doing, he turned around and ran to the bedside to take a look. He saw the little fellow sprawled out on his bed, hugging a pillow. He had long since fallen into a deep sleep. Crown Prince was speechless. Are you kidding me? The corner of Prince Mo's mouth twitched. He sat down on the edge of the bed, extended a slender finger, and gently poked a certain someone's soft little face. Under the illumination of the red candles, the little fellow was sleeping sweetly. His brows were relaxed, and the corners of his lips were slightly raised. Seeing her sleeping so peacefully and comfortably, Prince Mo's lips curled into a smile. Mo Lien raised a hand to touch her delicate brows and eyes. She turned and lay down beside her. Propping up her chin with one hand, she stared at her for a long time before murmuring softly, "What should I do with you?" The next day, Arbor woke up in a daze and heard the crisp chirping of birds outside the window. Xiaomu reflexively opened her small mouth and yawned. She shifted her body and creased her small brows in confusion. Strange, why doesn't it feel like a bed underneath me? Good morning, Xiao Xiao. A handsome face that was just inches away from her was reflected in her eyes. Wah! Arbor moved her little body and almost rolled off him. Mo Yin stretched out his long arm and immediately pulled her back. He blinked and smiled. You pressed on top of me the whole night, and you want to run away without saying anything? How could it be so easy in this world? Chapter 1977. Miss Chiao's face inexplicably turned completely red. No, it's you? Why are you here? Arbor wanted to get up, but a pair of arms were hooked around his waist, causing him to struggle for a long time. Don't you remember? Mo Yin frowned and pinched her little face. After you got drunk yesterday, you kept asking your husband to help you bathe. After bathing, you even insisted on hugging your husband to sleep. Nonsense. The little fellow immediately stuttered. Her little hand reached over and hit his head hard. Big liar. How could I be so ridiculous? Don't try to deny it. You were acting crazy when you were drunk. Now that you're awake, you won't admit it. Mo Yin looked at her bitterly and pointed at her little body that was lying on top of him. Do you see that? Evidence. For an entire night, your husband almost couldn't breathe under the pressure. Arbor hurriedly tried to get up. Yu, how are you? Are you feeling unwell anywhere? Could it be that her alcohol tolerance was really that bad? It couldn't be. Although her character wasn't that great, she still had a bottom line. Her alcohol tolerance shouldn't be that bad. My head is uncomfortable. My limbs are numb. I can't breathe. Mo Yin said faintly with his eyes slightly closed. Then what should we do? Arbor reached out to hold his wrist. I'll take your pulse and then give you acupuncture to unblock your muscles and bones. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Mo Yin flipped over. Miss Chiao only felt that the world was spinning. When she raised her head again, she saw Prince Mo pressing down on top of her head. Let's change the direction of your head, Mo Yin said softly as he propped up his chin with one hand beside her cheek. Yu, what are you doing? The little fellow suddenly felt that she had lost some of her confidence. She didn't know why, But this position made her feel a little creepy that she felt that the gentle crown prince in front of her could very well turn into a wild wolf in the next second. Feeling guilty, baby? What am I feeling guilty about? Arbor stubbornly defended herself. I'm not feeling guilty at all. What are you feeling guilty about? If you knew what kind of terrible things you did to me last night, you wouldn't have said those words just now. I don't remember anything. The little fellow put on a shameless face. I didn't do anything. Huh. He reached out and rubbed her little face. Do you still remember what you said to me last night? Tell me, when Xiaohua was your age, she was already the mother of 2 children. Arbor instantly felt like she had been struck by lightning. She pulled the thin blanket next to her and covered her face with it. Damn it. How could she say such shameful words? Her brain yesterday, Emolian twitched his mouth, and he pretended to be serious as he tugged at the thin blanket covering her face. What cover? I haven't finished speaking yet. That's not the only thing you did to me yesterday. I don't even remember. The little fellow's muffled voice came from under the thin blanket. It's okay. I remember everything. I'll tell you one by one. Wah. The little fellow hurriedly lifted the thin blanket on her face and reached out her little paw to seal the crown prince's mouth. You're not allowed to say it. Prince Emo tugged her little hand down and smiled as he lightly bit the little finger that she had brought to his lips. How are you going to compensate me? Chapter 1978. I can see that you're quite happy. Don't try to lie to me. The little fellow stuttered as she finished speaking, feeling that her little face was so hot that it was about to boil. Prince Emo giggled. He held her fingers and kissed them one by one before nodding and saying, although I can see that you're quite happy, that doesn't mean that you can always tease this crown prince and run away, right? I didn't run away. Miss Xiao stubbornly cried out. Where did I run away? She was still being pressed down by him right now. Prince Emo slightly lowered his body and whispered in her ear with a chuckle. If I wasn't pressing down on you, you would have run away long ago. Do you believe me? Gulp. The little fellow swallowed her saliva and hurriedly reached out to cover his sparkling phoenix eyes. You're not allowed to look. I'm panicking from looking. How can you not look? Prince Emo pulled down her little hand with a serious expression. I didn't know what eyes were used for in the past. Now that I know, it's to look at you. If you don't let me look at you, then what's the use of having eyes? The little fellow shrank herself into the thin blanket and covered her head. Her little face was boiling hot as she cried out in a muffled voice. You're teasing me. What's wrong with this guy today? Whispering sweet nothings so early in the morning, it made her flustered and her heart fluttered like a little deer. Wifey. Prince Emo slightly curled his lips and dug her little face out from the blanket. He looked at her with a grin, and his fingers pushed a strand of hair in front of her eyes to the back of her head. You'll be 16 after the new year. Arbor really wanted to dig a hole and bury herself. A while ago, she had indeed been thinking that JoJo would be 16 after the new year. 16 would be a big girl. Recently, her body had been well nourished. Compared to her previous life, she was completely too healthy. Moreover, she had indeed thought of that little flower in Kyoto Village. 16 years old, and she was already the mother of 2 children. But this was only what she thought in her heart. How would she know that she had blurted out everything to the crown prince when she was drunk? So angry, so angry, so angry. Wife, let's make a deal. When you're 16, we'll... Boom! Miss Xiao punched the back of the crown prince's head, took out a body securing talisman, and slapped it on the crown prince's forehead. Crown prince was speechless. We're going to draw lots for the competition today. Get up quickly. Arbor pushed his body with all his might. Like a little octopus, he hugged his limbs and rolled around. Then, he quickly slid down from the bed. Want to run away again? Emolian sat up and grabbed the little fellow's wrist. This habit of running away after flirting had to be changed. Arbor coughed. He didn't run. Why are you in such a hurry? Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. After saying that, he quickly put on his clothes and ran out without looking back. Crown Prince was speechless. After one night, His wifey completely refused to admit what she said yesterday. What should he do? The Crown Prince pondered as he got up to put on his coat and tied his belt. His fingers paused on the tassel of the jade pendant on his waist, and his eyes lit up. Chapter 1979. When his wife mentioned the boat, she was probably telling him that when the time came, success would naturally follow naturally. Even if the boat didn't straighten, he could just ask someone to straighten it. Crown Prince Mo intuitively felt that his thoughts were very reasonable, and he walked out of the door, neatly dressed with curved eyes. He waved his paw at his wifey, who was exercising her small hands and feet under the porch. Wifey, hubby understand your meaning. Shio. His wifey immediately ran back to her room and closed the door. She didn't give him a single glance. She's shy again, the Crown Prince thought with a melancholy face. Perhaps he should prepare a few bottles of fruit wine. An hour later, everyone gathered in the hall on the first floor. They casually ate the breakfast provided by the store and planned to head to the Shanghua Gladiator Arena. Today is the first battle of our elite academy. Everyone must compete well. Bring out 100,000% of your spirit. Students, today is the day to fight for the glory of our elite academy. Instructor Zhou finished his impassioned speech. When he turned around, black lines immediately appeared on his forehead. He saw that everyone was dragging their feet a dozen meters away from him with an expression that said, "I don't know this person." Just now, Zhou Donjin's provocative words had caused the surrounding citizens to point and whisper among themselves, covering their mouths and laughing secretly. In this world, there was no teacher more miserable than him, Zhou Danjin thought. Ahem, ahem. Zhou Danjin stretched out his hand, but before he could touch Jojo's shoulder, she turned her head and dodged. After Qiao Mu ran away, Qi Xian, little fatty, and the others naturally didn't pass on their responsibilities. With a whoosh, they brushed past Instructor Zhou. Instructor Zhou was flustered and exasperated as he raised his finger and pointed at the students who ran away. A group of little brats. A group of little brats. When he talked to them about serious matters, they all ran faster than rabbits. Everyone quickly arrived at the entrance of the Shanghua Gladiator Arena. As usual, they greeted the stewards and went in. Only this time, the two stewards looked at Yu Gui and the others with a very strange expression. Teacher Zhou stopped in his tracks and turned to look at that person. Does Elder Hong have any instructions? Oh no. The steward quickly shook his head and smiled. I just feel that these girls are quite lucky. Not long after leaving the Heavenly Bestowing Academy, something had happened to everyone there. Now they've all contracted a strange disease with green hair growing all over their bodies. They've been completely controlled by our city Lord's Mansion's guards. Instructor Zhou was stunned for a moment. Then he nodded. When he left the door and walked towards the arena, only then did Zhou Danjin cast an imperceptible glance at Qiao Mu. He coughed lightly and asked, "Did you do it?" Arbor looked at him expressionlessly. "Do I look like someone who would do something so boring? Why doesn't it look like it? It was too similar, wasn't it?" "Nope." Darling Qiao shook her head in all seriousness and snorted. "If I were to make a move, I would naturally want them dead." "That's true." The others nodded in agreement. As they walked to their seating area, they saw people waiting for them from afar. Seeing them come over, Soaring Flower Academy's captain, Gu Yoli, quickly walked towards them. She crossed her arms and said, "I've finally waited for you guys. Why are you waiting for us?" Little Fatty laughed strangely. "Are we that close to you?" Chapter 1980. Gu Yoli's face darkened as she said angrily, "Go away. Let your team leader speak." Everyone moved to the side to make way. As the team leader for this competition, it was naturally Duanmu Qing. Duanmu Qing frowned as he walked out of the crowd, looking at the girl in front of him indifferently. "What's the matter? You're the team leader of the top academy?" Gu Yoli sized up Duanmu Qing and nodded. "That's good. This is our Flying Flower Academy's challenge letter." Whoosh! A thin piece of paper flew towards Duanmu Qing's hand. Duanmu Qing stretched out 2 fingers and lightly pinched it. With a slight shake of his wrist, that thin piece of paper immediately slid down from his fingertips, shaking it into a silk book. The two words challenge letter entered everyone's eyes. This was Flying Flower Academy's challenge letter to their top academy. If the top academy did not want to be looked down upon, they had to accept it. No matter what, they had to accept it. Duan Mu-Chin coldly glanced at Gu Lioli, nodded, and took down the challenge letter. The top academy will accept the challenge as promised. The crowd of onlookers instantly burst into an uproar. Fuck, this was really surging with excitement. He didn't know what kind of background this top-notch academy had. Why would the Flying Flower Academy target it? Flying Flower Academy was an existence that was second only to the 4 great academies in Shuntian Prefecture. Their strength was not to be underestimated. This top academy, on the other hand, was unknown and had never been heard of before. Was there even a need to talk about this competition? That would definitely be a complete victory for Soaring Flower Academy, right? Everyone was guessing in their hearts, unable to hide the excitement on their faces. This was too exciting. Gu Lioli. Duan Mu-Chin coldly said this name and kept the challenge letter in his hand. His eyes were vast and misty as he looked at the other party. You will pay the price for your rashness today. After saying that, he turned and left. Gu Lioli clenched her fists and wanted to angrily rebuke, but she saw the group of people from the top academy looking disinterested as they turned and followed Zhou Danjin and the rest back to their seats. Gu Lioli's heart was filled with anger as she clenched her fists tightly, turned, and left quickly. Gu Lioli didn't know which match would be arranged and which match she would be fighting against the top academy. However, she was not afraid. Even if she was arranged to fight in the first round, it did not matter. She had already prepared enough means to deal with them. Now it was time for the student representatives to draw lots on stage. Looking at Arbor's figure on the stage again, even a fool would know that the little guy who drew the bye twice in a row was probably a very lucky person. But this time, because they didn't have a bye, the future of the top academies was uncertain. Everyone looked at Xiao Mu as if they were watching a good show. Arbor had already finished drawing lots and was waiting at the side. At this time, when he saw everyone looking at him, the little guy held the bamboo stick in his hand and stared back at them one by one. What are you looking at? All right, same old rules. Those who sign the same number stand together. Number 3. Arbor looked at the bamboo stick in his hand and searched for the number 3 representative in the crowd. Who's number 3? Number 3. What, you're number 3? Suddenly, there was a mournful cry from the other side. Arbor turned his head and saw Hippopotamus Academy's team leader, Shagua, holding a bamboo stick and staring blankly at him. His eyes were almost condensed into tears. Chapter 1981. His luck couldn't be this bad, right? Shagua blankly held that number 3. After looking at it carefully for a few seconds, he realized that the number 3 was still the same number 3. It didn't move at all. Shagua was really about to cry. What was going on? Why did the heavens play such a joke on him? He didn't want to draw Miss Chiao's team at all. Such a savage girl. What sin had he committed to meet her? Seeing Shagua look like he was about to faint, everyone couldn't help but feel curious. They sized him up a few more times. Someone familiar with him couldn't help but laugh and call out, Shagua, what's up? You have this weird expression on your face. Your team is quite lucky. After all, the top academies weren't famous academies and weren't among the top few academies. For this kind of unknown small academy, Hippo Academy was naturally a piece of cake. Advancing wasn't a problem. Who would have guessed? Hippo Academy's team leader, Shagua, looked at the onlookers with an accusing gaze and shouted indignantly, What do you guys know? This group of onlookers simply didn't mind watching a show. He was about to die from anxiety, all right? He didn't expect that they would be eliminated in the 3rd round of the semifinals. It was really too early. Arbor curiously sized up Hippo Academy's team leader, Shagua, before turning around and stomping down the stage. Just as he returned to the seating area, he saw the main referee, Elder Hong, walk up the stage with a smile and announce, Everyone, the highly anticipated 3rd round of the semifinals is about to begin. Before this, a team has chosen to publicly issue a challenge to battle and learn from each other. The entire audience was in an uproar. Many of the onlookers who didn't know the situation started to howl excitedly. As Elder Hong's voice fell, Gu Yuli led Zhao Li and the others up the stage, receiving everyone's attention. Flying Flower Academy, as the challenger of this competition, will have a fair battle with the top academies. Elder Hong extended his hand and gestured, "Let's invite the students of the top academies up the stage." Amidst the enthusiastic applause, Duan Muqing led the other 7 people from the top academies up the stage with a cold expression. The competition will begin immediately. Elder Hong turned the hourglass upside down and said with a smile, "The competition will start in 1 hour." Zhao Li from the Flying Flower Academy was the first to fly towards Arbor with his fists raised. The wind from his fists whistled as they swept across. Arbor didn't even look at him as he dodged to the side. At that moment, Duan Muqing and Qi Xianxian surrounded him. Each of them sent out a wave of spiritual energy towards Zhao Li's face. Both sides had used their killing moves. After being hit by Duanmu and Xianxian's attacks, even if the unlucky Zhao Li did not die, he would at least lose half his life. Zhao Li roared angrily. With a stomp of his foot, he immediately summoned his profound beast. That Xian beast looked a little like a cow, but it did not have horns on its head. It looked very ferocious, and it bit towards Qi Xuanxuan's forearm. Qi Xuanxuan's expression did not change, and her heart did not skip a beat. With a wave of her hand, she released her golden lion. The golden lion was very ferocious. It opened its mouth and bit Zhao Li's leg, tearing off a piece of his flesh. Zhao Li was in so much pain that he fell to the ground and rolled around, crying out in pain. Gu Yoli's eyes were filled with anger. She raised her sword and fiercely slashed towards Qi Xianxian. "You dare to use such a vicious move." Chapter 1982. What a joke. They had already issued a challenge, so of course they had to treat it seriously. Who would throw the match for no good reason? What do you mean by vicious? Qi Xianxian glanced at Gu Yoli and shook her head with a smile. That was your team member who released the mystical beast first. Since it's a battle between beasts, then it's easy to handle. Isn't it reasonable to let the beasts fight among themselves? Quibble. Before Gu Yoli could finish her sentence, she felt the wind from a palm strike towards her face. Gu Yoli was furious, and she rolled on the ground to avoid the palm strike. She looked up and saw the little girl's cold face, looking at her with a frosty expression. Gu Yoli held her breath, and a wave of wood spiritual energy appeared in her hand, which she slapped towards the ground. However, brambles and thorns burrowed out from the ground and shot straight for Qiao Mu, enveloping her body. Screech! The cry of an ancient phoenix appeared in the air above the stage. Whoosh! A raging flame shot out, and the entire center of the stage was set ablaze by the flames. Gu Yoli and Zhao Li's 2 mystical beasts were surrounded in the center of the flames. They clutched their heads in panic, not daring to look up at the ancient bloodfire phoenix. What a joke! That was an ancient sacred beast, okay? In front of a sacred beast, these 2 mystical beasts weren't even enough to fill the gaps between its teeth. Wah, was a master too awesome. She actually offended an ancient sacred beast. At this moment, Gu Yuli was probably stunned as well. She was crawling on the ground, not moving at all. Arbor flipped its hand and slapped the ground with a wave of wood spiritual energy. One after another, the man-eating flowers transformed from wood spirits rapidly opened their sawtooth mouths, sweeping towards Gu Yuli and Zhao Li. Roar! A ferocious beast jumped out from behind Zhao Li. It opened its mouth and swallowed the few man-eating flowers transformed from the wood spirits. Then it threw Gu Yoli and Zhao Li onto its back and jumped up with all its strength. Bang! Qishue instantly transformed into his human form. He raised his foot and kicked the back of the ferocious beast from the sky, smashing the unlucky fellow to the ground. The human form of the phoenix was very delicate and beautiful. It looked like a 12 or 13-year-old youth, wrapped in a scarlet robe. It had red lips, white teeth, sword-like eyebrows, and bright eyes. Its eyes looked left and right, and with a whoosh, it landed beside its little master. Master, do you want to swallow these little shrimps? These things wouldn't even be enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. Xiao Mu silently glanced at him and didn't say anything, but she was ridiculing him in her heart. Although there might be a few deaths during the competition, there shouldn't be much of a problem. But if you're like you, swallowing all the other team members in one go, that would definitely be a big deal. Master, Qi Shui pointed Zhao Li. Master, Qi Shui, Master. When the latter saw his finger pointing at him, he was so frightened that he wanted to shrink back into a crack in the ground. He was so frightened that his teeth were slightly shaking and chattering. Seeing his frightened appearance, Qi Shui couldn't help but snort disdainfully. Suddenly turning its head, it transformed into its phoenix true form and roared at Zhao Li. Zhao Li was so frightened that he crawled back a few steps, covering his head and shrieking. That ugly appearance really made everyone in the seating area gasp in amazement. Ah, don't kill me, don't kill me. Chapter 1983. Zhao Li rolled on the ground and hid behind the Flying Flower Academy's crowd. He screamed, "Lioli, Lioli!" Gu Lioli hurriedly flew in front of him and shouted angrily at Arbor. Using a sacred beast to bully others, can this still be considered a fair competition? Miss Xiao leisurely looked at her and nodded. Wealth is also a part of strength. There was nothing wrong with what she said. Hearing this, Gu Lioli's face darkened, but she couldn't do anything else. The little girl was arrogant, but what she said wasn't wrong at all. This competition didn't forbid mystical beasts from participating. Since it was able to participate in the battle, the strength of a Xian beast would inevitably become the key to whether the master could win or not. Gu Yuli could only blame herself for being inferior to others. If she relied on her own strength, she might not lose. Blazing blood, I'll leave it to you. The blazing blood fire phoenix cried out proudly. Its wings flapped slightly, and it rushed towards Zhao Li on the ground. Seeing that Zhao Li was about to be seriously injured by the blazing blood fire phoenix's flames, Gu Yuli shouted angrily and flung out the cloak on her body to meet the flames. Everyone saw that the black cloak flying in the air was burned to charcoal by the blazing blood fire phoenix's flames. The blazing blood fire phoenix was enraged. It screeched at Gu Lioli and circled in the air before swooping down. A line of fire shot out from its mouth towards Gu Lioli and Zhao Li. With a whoosh, Gu Lioli and Zhao Li were trapped in a circle of fire. They stood with their backs against each other, and their faces instantly stiffened. The blazing blood fire phoenix flapped its wings and circled in the air, preparing to kill the two of them in one breath. The Flying Flower Academy's teachers couldn't watch any longer. They jumped up from their seats and screamed, "Everyone stop! Our Flying Flower Academy admits defeat." The Flying Flower Academy's students all looked emaciated. Under the ancient blazing blood fire phoenix's pressure, they almost couldn't breathe. They didn't expect that there would be such a perverted student in a top academy. She even summoned a sacred beast for the competition. This was a battle on a completely different level, okay? Qi Xianxian couldn't help but laugh. She shook her head and said, "You don't even know the other party's strength, yet you dare to casually issue a challenge. Forgive her for not being able to agree with such behavior." Of the 12 students from the Soaring Flower Academy, more than half of them were being chased by the blazing blood fire phoenix. As for the remaining few, Duan Muqing and the others were more than capable of dealing with them. They didn't even need to summon their Xian beasts. They could just directly attack. In the entire arena, only the miserable cries of the Flying Flower Academy's students could be heard. The people in the seating area simply could not bear to look straight at them. Was this the legendary challenge to get beaten up in the arena? When the Soaring Flower Academy's instructor saw that the students from the top academies were not stopping, he couldn't help but turn to glare angrily at Zhou Danjin, Wei Wei, and the others. "Quickly tell your students to stop. It's just a competition. Don't tell me you want to kill someone." Zhou Danjin rolled his eyes at him. "Stop it. What's the use of you screaming and admitting defeat outside the arena? Your students haven't admitted defeat yet. Lioli, don't force yourself. Quickly admit defeat." Gu Lioli only felt a trace of suppressed grief and indignation flash past her heart. Just because her background was inferior to the other party, she deserved to be humiliated like this? She was born a commoner, and her family background was far from those large and medium aristocratic families. That lady who could casually summon the ancient blazing bloodfire phoenix was definitely a lady from some large family. Chapter 1984. There was almost no doubt about this. Only the well-known aristocratic families in the upper three prefectures could possibly have the existence of a saint beast guarding a house. The little girl's family background was definitely several hundred times better than Zhao Li's. Otherwise, it would be impossible for her to have such wealth to support her, to be able to casually summon a sacred beast. Gu Yoli resisted the blazing flames as she quickly calculated in her mind. Which aristocratic family in the upper three prefectures had an ancient bloodfire phoenix as a guardian? No matter how she thought about it, she couldn't come up with a logical answer. Meanwhile, Zhao Li's leg had already been spat out a mouthful of flames by the bloodfire phoenix. He was rolling back and forth on the ground, wailing in pain. "Stop, stop!" Gu Yuli screamed. Our Soaring Flower Academy admits defeat." Gu Yuli heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. At this moment, she even felt as if she had survived a disaster. Thinking back to when she had issued the battle invitation, she hadn't issued a life and death invitation. Her heart couldn't help but pound. Luckily, everything could be salvaged. If she had issued a life and death invitation, that the consequences would have been unimaginable. Arbor didn't intend to make things difficult for them. Hearing Gu Lioli's call to stop, he waved his hand at the bloodfire phoenix. The ancient phoenix cried out and swooped down, excitedly flying towards its little master's side. When it rushed in front of Arbor, the enormous pressure of the phoenix had already completely disappeared. A scarlet little bird chirped a few times, cutely landing on Arbor's arm. It stood on its claws and flapped its little wings twice. After taking 2 steps, it jumped onto Arbor's shoulder. Everyone from Soaring Flower Academy was dumbstruck. It was hard to imagine that such a cute little thing was the huge creature that had chased after them and set them on fire, causing them so much pain that they wished they were dead. The little fellow raised its hand and stroked the phoenix's feathers. Only then did it raise its eyes to look at Gulioli. It glanced at her indifferently before turning to Duan Muqing and the others. "Let's go." Since the other party had admitted defeat, there was naturally nothing left to say. It was originally a hilarious battle with a great disparity in strength. Arbor didn't really think that he would have to kill these people. It was originally just a few words. Since the other party had issued the battle invitation, they naturally had to accept it. Otherwise, they would be cowards. Now that the matter was settled, Arbor didn't want to stay in the ring any longer. They turned around and were about to jump off the ring. Screams could be heard from the seating area. Instructor Zhou shouted angrily, "How dare you!" Several instructors from top academies had already flown into the arena. Xiao Mu coldly glanced at him from the corner of her eye, only to see Zhao Li, that guy, release a venomous snake from his sleeve. It abruptly jolted in midair and opened its mouth to bite at her back. Arbor sneered coldly. Her left wrist shook slightly, and the little white snake coiled around her wrist like a bracelet flew out with a whoosh. A pair of watery eyes flashed with anger. She opened her mouth, and the little snake head suddenly turned into a huge shadow. With a bang, it swallowed the poisonous snake that was flying over. "Ah!" Gu Yoli and the others screamed. The white snake's huge head was already in front of the panic-stricken Zhao Li. He simply couldn't dodge in time. The upper half of Zhao Li's body was bitten by the huge snake. His 2 legs struggled outside for a moment before the lower half of his body and the upper half of his body completely disintegrated. "Ah!" The arena was filled with piercing screams. Everyone's eyes were filled with blood. They were all completely shocked by the bloody scene in front of them. Make up for yesterday's 2 chapters. Yesterday's 10,000 chapters ended. Today's 10,000 chapters around midnight. Chapter 1985. "Ah!" Gulioli screamed. Her eyes were filled with disbelief as she stared at Zhao Li, who only had half his body left, and was thrown on the stage like trash. Savage while bloodthirsty, her eyes were filled with blood, and she was trembling uncontrollably. Kill, kill. You killed Zhao Li. Ah. Murder. Zhao Li is dead. Murder. A few of the Flying Flower Academy students were so scared that they almost lost their minds. The main thing was that the scene in front of them was too terrifying. Half of it had been swallowed alive by a giant snake. This Zhao Li, just how much bad luck did he have in this lifetime to end up in such a state where his corpse was buried? Would the Zhao family people let this matter go? Gu Yoli and the rest were so frightened that their teeth chattered. Zhao Li's father, the head of the Zhao family, won't let you off. Gu Yoli trembled all over, almost not daring to look at the half of the body on the ground. The giant snake's head circled around in front of everyone before retracting back with a whoosh. It circled around Arbor's left arm once again, quietly not moving at all. Gu Yoli and the rest gazes fell on Arbor's wrist. If they looked at it like this, who would know that the white jade bracelet on the little girl's wrist was actually a vicious beast? Too terrifying. Everyone's hearts were shaken to the extreme. The large seating area of over 10,000 spectators was silent at this moment. Arbor coldly swept a glance at Gu Yoli. Zhou Danjin, Wei Wei, and the other instructors had also rushed to Arbor's side at this moment. When the Flying Flower Academy's instructor hurried to the stage, he fiercely glared at Zhou Danjin and the rest and angrily reprimanded. Your top academy actually dared to kill our students in public on the stage? I demand that you take responsibility for this matter to the end. Take responsibility for what? Zhou Danjin's face darkened as he angrily retorted. Sneak attacking from the back and assassinating in the dark. Now that your skills are inferior and you're killed, you deserve it. The Flying Flower Academy's instructor's face darkened as he defended himself. How can this be considered a sneak attack from the back? It's clearly Zhao Li. Lie? Fabricate. Teacher Zhou sneered and said, the sneak attack from behind was witnessed by everyone, and everyone knew about it. Let's see how you're going to justify yourself. Don't waste your breath on them. Instructor who waved his hand and said to Arbor and the others, go and rest first. Since this matter had been resolved by her teacher, there was no need for her to worry about it. Arbor naturally nodded and followed his team members down the stage. When the Flying Flower Academy's instructor saw that they were going to continue like this, how could he be willing to let it go? Just as he shouted, stop right there, he was already stopped by Instructor Zhou. Hey, are you looking for a fight? No wonder the students of your Flying Flower Academy are so despicable. So, it's because they have a mentor like you. Who are you calling despicable? I already said that Zhao Li didn't launch a sneak attack from behind. He's just young and hot-headed and doesn't want to admit defeat. Get lost. Instructor Zhou angrily flicked his sleeves. You only have yourself to blame for being killed in an instant for an attack from the back. I won't take any responsibility. All of you. The Flying Flower Academy's instructor still wanted to say something, but the main referee, Hong Chi, walked up and cupped his hands towards him. This instructor from Flying Flower Academy has a personal grudge with the top academy. Please step down and settle it yourself. Chapter 1986. We still have to continue with the competition. Hong Chi glanced at the Flying Flower Academy's instructor and gestured for him to leave. His meaning was obvious. He wanted this instructor to leave the stage and not interfere with the students' normal competition. The Flying Flower Academy's instructor waved his sleeves and ordered people to carry Zhao Li's corpse. The two students who were carrying the corpse kept turning their heads to the side. How would they dare to look at Zhao Li's horrifying body? Their hands, which were carrying the corpse, couldn't help but tremble slightly. They only felt that they might have nightmares in the middle of the night. Useless things, the Flying Flower Academy's instructor scolded. Carry it properly. No matter what, this corpse had to be handed over to the Zhao family for them to see. As for the grudges with the top academies, a small instructor like him couldn't do anything about it. He would leave it to the Zhao family to deal with. The Flying Flower Academy's instructor's eyes revealed a trace of ruthlessness. The Zhao family wasn't a small family that could be easily dealt with. That student from the top academy killed Zhao Li and offended the Zhao family. He was afraid that things wouldn't end well. Arbor had already returned to his seat. He took out a small jar of peanuts from his inner world and started eating with his friends. Everyone chatted as they ate. They didn't seem to care about how alluring the scene of the bloody corpse was. They continued to eat happily. Little Fatty looked up and saw that Gu Yuli had turned around and ran to the outside of the seating area. She was hugging a pillar and retching in the corner. What's wrong with her? She was probably disgusted by the corpse just now. Qi Xianxian grabbed a handful of peanuts without any psychological burden. She shook her hand as she ate, her face full of disapproval. Her psychological endurance is too weak. She couldn't take it after looking at such a childish scene. What should she do when she meets a rotten corpse puppet in the future? Mata nodded. That's right. That's why it's useless to be strong. She has to have a strong psychological endurance. That's the way. Otherwise, I'll be like her. She'll faint after looking at the blood. How could she fight? She would be strangled to death in minutes. Arbor was expressionless as he watched the jar in his hand being taken away by the venerable peach blossom immortal. He lowered his head and looked at his empty hands. Yin couldn't help but want to laugh. She turned her head to look at the little fellow, raised her hand to pinch her little face, and said, "Don't take those idle people to heart. The instructors of your academy seem to be quite free. Let them handle it." Arbor swallowed the last 2 peanuts in his hand and silently looked up at Zhou Danjin and the others who were walking back angrily. That instructor's surname Pan from Flying Flower Academy is too laughable, Zhou Danjin said angrily. It's an obvious fact, and he's still trying to quibble. I don't want to say anything to him. Everyone nodded in agreement. Instructor, what did that guy say after that? Bullshit. Teacher, Zhou waved his hand and sat down beside them. That guy surnamed Pan was still spouting nonsense. Your teacher Wei Wei went up and gave him 2 punches before he finally shut up. Everyone was speechless. Teacher Zhou patted the armrest of the chair and said to them earnestly, "Is Teacher Wei Wei's approach right? Obviously not. When we can reason with others, we shouldn't casually fight with them, right?" Chapter 1987. Don't learn from Instructor Wei Wei in the future. His temper is too irritable. Zhou Danjin looked disapproving as he waved his hand and sighed. However, he saw Qi Xianxian and the others looking at Wei Wei with shining eyes, their faces full of adoration. Zhou Danjin couldn't resist twitching his mouth. What's with your expressions? I think Instructor Wei Wei did beautifully this time. The little fatty raised his chubby paw and said, "When that Pan guy came up to make noise for half a day, I already couldn't resist the urge to beat him up. Right. Especially when I saw him licking his face and forcefully trying to clear Zhao Li's name, I especially couldn't control my desire to beat him up." Qi Xianxian also nodded repeatedly. Instructor Zhou! Exclamation point. What you're doing is wrong. We still have to be reasonable when it comes to reasoning, right? If reasoning doesn't make sense, we can resort to other methods. Instructor Zhou persuaded everyone earnestly and then turned to look at Miss Qiao, who was silently eating dried fruit without saying a word. Look, Jojo's attitude is the one that truly solves a problem. Instructor Zhou pointed at Arbor and nodded approvingly. Sometimes, when the other party sees that you're silent, right, he won't continue to be long-winded. We have to be clear about this. Violence is really the most inferior way to solve a problem, isn't it? Duan Muqing and the others silently glanced at the little stoic. Didn't Instructor Zhou overlook something? Just now, Jojo didn't say anything and just let the little white snake bite Zhao Li to death. Okay? Jojo definitely wouldn't make noise for others, right? What was she making noise for? Wasn't her way of solving a problem to directly slap someone to death, and then her ears would be especially quiet? You want Jojo to reason with others? Ha! Everyone wanted to laugh out loud. Wasn't this a fantasy? Would Jojo blindly argue with you? If she had the time to blindly argue with you, she would have already slapped you to death so that you would never be able to argue. Okay? They really didn't understand JoJo's way of dealing with people. This time, even Crown Prince Imo swept a disapproving glance at Mentor Zhou Danjin. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who had snatched JoJo's jar of peanuts, wanted to laugh. However, he held it in and coughed lightly. The little stoic turned a deaf ear to everyone's chatter and calmly ate the dried fruit in her hand. Boom! A loud tremor suddenly came from the distant seating area, startling the two teams competing in the arena. Everyone stood up, and the teams in the competition stopped what they were doing. Their gazes all turned towards the source of the sound. A huge pit had appeared beneath the feet of the instructor from the Flying Flower Academy, surnamed Pan. Teacher Pan was caught off guard. How could he have expected that the soles of his feet would suddenly sink when he was sitting perfectly fine? How big of a pit was this? Instructor Pan fell headfirst into the pit. He was completely stupefied. Not only was Instructor Pan dumbfounded, but even the stewards of Shanghua Martial Arts Arena, who were responsible for maintaining order, were also dumbfounded. Their Shanghua Martial Arts Arena had experienced so many competitions and basically held all kinds of big and small competitions every year. They had never heard of anyone falling into a pit. Okay? Just how heavy was this instructor from the Flying Flower Academy to be able to make the pitiful ground unable to bear his weight and fall into the pit? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal burst out laughing, which then turned into a wild guffaw. Everyone looked at the embarrassed Instructor Zhou with a mocking gaze. Chapter 1988. Instructor Zhou's face hurts? Ha 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 ha. The laughter of Little Fatty and the others formed a unique band, transforming into Instructor Zhou's awkward backdrop and setting off Zhou Danjin's stupefied face. Cough. Zhou Danjin coughed lightly and turned to look. Even Instructor Wei Wei's stern and inflexible face couldn't conceal his smile. While he was praising JoJo's attitude as a true problem-solving attitude, the miserable Instructor Pan was in big trouble. Although Miss Xiao was silently gnawing on her dried fruit, Zhou Danjin dared to bet his head that this girl definitely had something to do with the large pit that appeared under Instructor Pan's, but, needless to say, Zhou Danjin felt that his old face really hurt a bit right now. Xiao, what exactly did you do? Zhou Danjin coughed again and speechlessly glared at his worrisome student. Just as he wanted to elevate her image, who knew that Miss Xiao glanced at Instructor Zhou from the corner of her eye and expressionlessly turned her small face away, continuing to gnaw on her dried fruit. However, Qi Xianxian and the others couldn't stop laughing. It was as if their laughing acupoints had been pressed, and they were rocking back and forth with laughter. Rewind time to 15 minutes ago. Instructor who waved his hand at them and said, "You all can go and rest first." When Arbor turned to leave, her fingers moved slightly, and an explosion talisman enveloped by an invisibility talisman stuck to the butt of the Soaring Flowers Academy instructor who was spouting sophistry like gangrene attached to a bone. Everything that happened afterwards was practically a matter of course. As long as Arbor willed it, that explosion talisman would explode whenever she wanted it to. Just now, she saw that Instructor Pan, who was incessantly snoring, holding a teacup handed to him by a student and pretending to drink water. Miss Xiao promptly made the explosion talisman under his, but take effect. Right now, this Instructor Pan probably didn't just have a very ugly fall. His but should be the worst hit, right? Who knew if it had split open now? What did you think I did? The little stoic swept Instructor Zhou and the others a glance, and silently took out a cup of spiritual tea. Before she could bring it to her lips, it was snatched away by Zhichun, who was sitting on the side. Good tea. Just smelling it makes me feel extraordinary. The little stoic lifted her eyes to glance at him. She could only take out another cup and take a sip before saying dryly, "Do I look like someone who would do such a senseless thing?" Similar. Everyone gave her a word of affirmation in their hearts. Although they didn't know what she had done, they were very sure that she had done it. At this moment, Instructor Pan had already climbed out of the pit. His face was flushed red as he pointed at the stewards of the Shanghua Battle Arena who had surrounded him. He anxiously asked, Your Shanghua Martial Arts Arena, is often used for competitions. Once, twice, and thrice, the ground will be oppressed by the impact of spiritual energy. Don't they know how to repair the ground regularly? Although the corners of the stewards' mouths twitched slightly, they still comforted Instructor Pan kindly and immediately ordered people to take him away to apply medicine and rest. Looking at Instructor Pan's twisted walking posture, everyone's eyebrows couldn't help but twitch. This unlucky Instructor Pan, could it be that? He had injured himself somewhere he shouldn't have. Wasn't it just an explosion from the explosion talisman? As for his walking posture being so ugly, Arbor secretly ridiculed in her heart. Chapter 1989. Cough. Jojo, I didn't see you make a move. Instructor Zhou was still curious. He really didn't see when Arbor made a move. However, it was obvious that before that, Arbor had already made a move on Instructor Pan. Looking at Instructor Pan's current state, Miss Chow must have hit him rather hard. Lame. A certain someone defended herself stubbornly. I'm too lazy to make a move on him. What talisman did you use? It's so powerful. The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal asked. Everyone then understood that Miss Chow had used a talisman just now. Strange. They didn't see her move at all. When did she stick the talisman on him? Arbor coughed and silently raised his hand to stuff a piece of dried fruit into his mouth. Mo Yin couldn't help but laugh. She raised her hand to rub the little fellow's head. Naughty. Everyone nodded emotionally, agreeing with the Crown Prince's judgment. This child was naughty indeed. Look at how Instructor Pan had made a fool of himself in front of everyone. The funniest one was Instructor Zhou. He had been praising this child for being silent. But in less than 3 seconds, he had been slapped in the face. This would probably be a shadow in Instructor Zhou's heart for the rest of his life. Let's see if he would still casually praise Jojo in the future. Ha 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 ha. Everyone couldn't help but laugh when they thought of this. Arbor turned his little face and shook his sleeves. He took out a fire explosion talisman and slapped it on Instructor Zhou's hand, who was smiling awkwardly. This is Fire Explosion Talisman. Miss Chow glanced at Zhou Danjin. Do you want me to demonstrate it? Oh no need. Just from a name alone, one could tell that this talisman wasn't anything good. It was better to use it against the enemy. Instructor Zhou put away the talisman. His mood brightened up a little. Laugh, your sister. Although he had been slapped in the face, who else would receive the same treatment as him? Little Chow even gave him a talisman. Qi Xianxian covered her face and laughed. Instructor, when our Jojo can actually make a move, he probably won't blindly argue with others. So please don't tell that joke in the future. Instructor Zhou laughed awkwardly. Suddenly, he pointed at the arena and shouted, Hey, it's your turn to prepare. He was about to enter the arena again. This is the first real match for all of you. Work hard. Bring glory to the academy. Following Instructor Zhou's impassioned cry, the various instructors and students sitting near them all turned their heads to look at them. Instructor, who coughed dryly, covered his face and turned his head. He moved the chair closer to Instructor Wei Wei and muttered, Why do I not want to know this person so much? Instructor Wei Wei glanced away expressionlessly. All right, tutor, let me treat you to a bun. The little fatty stuffed a vegetable bun into Instructor Zhou's mouth with one hand. He also had half a bun in his mouth as he followed Duanmu Qing and the others to the arena. This battle was between the Top Academy and the Hippo Academy. There was one thing that Teacher Zhou was right about. After 2 consecutive rounds, this was their first real battle in the Academy ranking tournament. I'm so excited. Students of Hippo Academy, you can't disappoint us. I'm just waiting to fight with you. The 8 students from the top academies were lined up in a row on the stage. Aside from the stoic face and Captain Duanmu, almost everyone had a motherly smile on their faces as they looked in the direction of the stage, waiting for the students from Hippo Academy. 2 minutes later, everyone was still smiling. Chapter 1990. 5 minutes later, Qi Xianxian and the others couldn't smile anymore. The main referee, Hong Qi, strode to the center of the arena. He first glanced at Qi Xianxian and the others, whose smiles were a bit stiff, then turned to the seating area and called out, "Student from Hippo Academy, please enter the arena." The seating area was filled with rustling sounds. Everyone looked at each other, and they were all looking around, hoping to see the figures of Hippo Academy students. "Hey, what's going on? Where's Captain Shagwa from Hippo Academy? What time is it? Why hasn't he appeared yet? What the hell is Hippo Academy doing? Do they think the Academy ranking tournament is child's play? Exactly. What's going on? Could it be that Shagwa and the others feel that they can't beat the people from the top academies, so they simply gave up? That really shouldn't be the case. Even if they can't beat them, they still have to go up. Giving up without even saying a word, that's really too cowardly." Exactly. Everyone's discussion was endless. Qi Xian and the other top academy students' expressions also began to turn ugly. Based on their understanding of Shagwa, even if he didn't come to participate, he wouldn't just disappear like that. At least he would go up on stage and admit defeat openly. That way, the tournament would end perfectly, right? Everyone turned their heads and subconsciously looked at the expressionless stoic face. Wait a little longer. Light the incense. Following Hong Chi's shout, someone lit a medium-length incense in the center of the arena. After 15 minutes, if Hippo Academy students don't go up on stage, it'll be considered as forfeiting. The top academies will automatically advance to the 4th round of the semifinals according to the rules. The audience was in an uproar. Everyone didn't know if those guys from the top academies had saved the world in their previous lives. How could their luck be so damn good? What the hell? A senior from Shuntian Prefecture's Dawn Light Academy couldn't help but curse under his breath. Do they have good luck? Are those 2 female members of the top academy's team the ones who rode the land whale with us when we first came to Shuntian Prefecture? In the back row of Dawn Light Academy's preparatory team, a very ordinary-looking girl frowned and asked. "That's right." Lu Hao nodded and said to the woman in a low voice, "Princess, let's just wait and see. This luck is way too good." A pretty girl sitting next to the princess couldn't help but pout her lips. Unconvinced, she said, "Hippo Academy actually gave up. We've never had such good luck." In reality, they were all students who had just arrived at Shuntian Hall not too long ago. There were only a few of the more outstanding ones among the new students, so they obtained the qualifications to come and watch the qualifier competition. However, the chances of them actually taking the field were 0. "Shut up, stop nagging me," the princess rebuked. "Big brother Sue." The woman pouted and looked at the square-faced man beside her. The man could not help but say angrily, "Lu Tiantian, how many times have I told you? Don't act like a princess here. Stop yelling at you." Shen Hanyu pursed her lips and smiled complacently. Her gaze swept across Lu Tiantian's angry face, and then she looked away in disdain. Seeing that the candles on the stage were about to burn to the bottom, the spectators could not help but sigh. Wait. Chapter 1991. The luck of the top academies was unparalleled. Could it be that they were going to skip the 3rd round? This luck was too enviable. Needless to say, with such good luck, even the big academies were starting to pay attention to the top academies. Especially, in the previous matches, there were students from the top academies who summoned their sacred beasts. Oh no, that little girl seemed to have 2 terrifying beasts by her side. The white snake that suddenly appeared was also very oppressive. Although they couldn't tell what level of beast it was, they could feel that the deterrence it gave off was not lower than the blazing blood phoenix. With such people in the top academies, it would be very difficult to win against them. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but feel discouraged. Even if the people from Hippo Academy came, they would probably be eliminated in minutes. All right, time's up. Put down the incense. I will now announce that because of Hippo Academy's last-minute withdrawal, the top academies will successfully advance to the... Wait a minute. A voice interrupted Hong Chi. Everyone turned to look, and their faces couldn't help but become slightly excited. They saw Sha Gua leading a group of Hippo Academy students, his eyes drooping as he strode over. "Something happened on the way here, so I'm a little late," Sha Gua said faintly, glancing at the extinguishing incense on the ground from the corner of his eye. Fortunately, I made it at the last moment." The atmosphere in the viewing area was instantly ignited. Everyone was clapping their seats and cheering. Hippo Academy dared to participate in the competition without fear of danger. Their courage was commendable. Everyone applauded and cheered. For a moment, the atmosphere in the entire arena was pushed to the peak of excitement. "Good." Everyone applauded, full of anticipation for an exciting battle. Of course, there were more academies who wanted to observe the battle style of the top academies, so that they could come up with the best strategy when they meet them in future battles. Shagua led the people from Hippo Academy onto the stage. Everyone's head was slightly lowered, not looking directly at Arbor and the others. Qi Xianxian frowned slightly. Because they had made it to the end in the underground base, most of the people from Hippo Academy and Sunlight Academy had buried the hatchet. Their impression of Shagua and the others had improved a lot. But now that they met again on the stage, Shagua and the others didn't even greet them. They didn't even look at them from the corner of their eyes. Such a contemptuous attitude made little Fatty and the others feel a little unhappy. "Good." Referee Hong Chi's laughter could be heard from the side. Although the people from Hippo Academy are late, at least they managed to arrive at the last minute of the delay. Let's not waste any more words. You two teams to start the competition. After Hong Chi turned around and left, Shagua suddenly signaled with his eyes, and the 10 team members simultaneously attacked Xiao Mu and company. Streams of mystic energy and spiritual energy intertwined to form a gauze net that flew back and forth and rushed toward Xiao Mu and company. Arbor's the 8 people to their positions to play. The 8 people to their positions to play. Little Fatty opened an Earth Spirit shield and rushed to the front. Behind him, Qi Xianxian and Duanmu Qing rushed to the front. Chapter 1992. Duanmu Qing activated his wood spirit, and wooden thorns emerged from the ground and wrapped around the legs of Shagua and the others. Qi Xianxian threw down a few bolts of lightning. However, she hadn't broken through to the spirit realm, so she couldn't use her spiritual power as she wished. However, under the guidance of the Thunder Spirit instructor, Qi Xianxian had already learned how to maximize the effectiveness of her limited spiritual power and maintain it for the best amount of time. Behind the two were Ma Ta, Hua Tao, and Jiang Shaoxin. 2 of them controlled the water spirit, while Jiang Shaoxin controlled the fire spirit. They used all their skills to collide with the spiritual power thrown at them by their opponents. In the end, Liu Yu opened the Earth Spirit barrier and helped Little Fatty to cover everyone inside. Arbor acted as if nothing had happened as he stood beside everyone. With a flick of his finger, he threw out a few fire and water spirit talismans. When the 8 of them worked together, they were practically invulnerable. Normal people couldn't break their formation at all. Instructor Zhou, Wei Wei, and the other instructors couldn't help but nod as they watched, their faces revealing expressions of admiration. The formation that these young children had come up with on their own was pretty good. They were good at both offense and defense. The 8 of them against the 10 of them easily withstood the attacks without showing the slightest sign of fatigue. Miss Chiao could even wander around the team and reinforce her teammates at any time. This 8-man formation couldn't be any better. Everyone's positions were basically in place, and the strong and the weak were well matched. With their 8-man team, it would be a piece of cake for them to deal with 10 or 20 people. Instructor Zhou had a gratified smile on his face as he nodded. Not bad, not bad. The decision to throw them into the underground arena to participate in the championship was simply brilliant. If they didn't team up and compete together all the time, how could they form such a good rapport? Instructor Wei Wei glanced at Zhou Danjin indifferently. It was my decision to kick them into Qian Luo's underground arena. You even objected at that time. Zhou Danjin was speechless. Boom! The 2 teams collided fiercely. Shagua, who was in the lead, suddenly raised his head. His eyes were blood red, and an extremely strong air current erupted from his body, forming a small storm that swept towards Arbor. Shagua's abnormal behavior immediately aroused the vigilance of Duanmu Qing and the rest. Seeing that he had suddenly attacked Arbor, everyone immediately changed their formation and formed a double triangle, surrounding Miss Xiao in the center. Xiaogua's whirlwind was blocked by Duan Muqing, who pursed his lips in displeasure. Everyone backhanded Xiaogua a few fireballs and ice attacks. Qi Xianxian angrily shouted, "Xiaogua, what are you trying to do? Could it be that this brat wanted to completely fall out with him?" One had to know that from the start of the battle until now, they had been holding back. No one had summoned a profound beast. If they really summoned their beasts, then there was no need for this battle to continue. Xiaogua turned a deaf ear to the cries of the crowd. A bloody light flashed in his eyes as he suddenly roared into the sky. The 9 members of Hippo Academy who were following behind him opened their eyes at the same time. A streak of blood flashed through their eyes, and they madly grabbed the profound artifacts in their hands. Together, they pounced towards Arbor, who was surrounded in the center. It seemed that they wouldn't stop until they killed her. Everyone's eyes were filled with suspicion. Could it be that Xiaogua and his group were being controlled? Chapter 1993. Arbor didn't panic when he saw this. He raised his hand, and hundreds of defensive talismans formed a circle around him, forming an extremely strong defensive array around him. He had already passed through the group of teammates. With a slight movement of his fingers, a dozen or so immobilization talismans fell down. After the talismans activated, the immobilization talismans fell on the 10 people from Hippo Academy. They only managed to immobilize 3 or 4 of them. The other 5 or 6 people seemed to be enraged. They all drew a line of spiritual energy and pushed it out. In an instant, it was as if they were about to topple mountains and overturn seas, rushing toward Arbor. Instructor Zhou was just about to jump out when Mo Lien pressed his hand down. Prince Mo coldly watched the fight in the arena. He said in a flat voice, "Trust Jojo. She'll be fine." The spiritual energy released by the 6 people from Hippo Academy, Xiaogua, and the others collided with the defensive array, creating a glaring light. After the explosion, Arbor's figure immediately flashed behind Xiaogua. Xiaogua suddenly turned his head. A glimmer of light flashed through his scarlet eyes. Unfortunately, before he could move, he was chopped down by Arbor's hand. With a bang, he crashed into the arena. Duan Muqing used his with spiritual energy to bind 2 of the Hippo Academy members. Apart from 3 people who were still stubbornly resisting, the rest were all immobilized by Arbor's immobilization talismans. Qi Xianxian and the little fatty naturally had a much easier time dealing with them. Soon, the battle came to an end. All of the Hippo Academy students were restrained by Arbor's group. However, although they were bound by spiritual energy, their entire bodies were still twisting and moving. They wanted to break free of the restraints and counterattack. Arbor didn't hesitate to step forward. He gave each of them a chop, knocking them all unconscious. He then turned around and said expressionlessly, "Take them away." At this moment, if the people present still couldn't see that something was wrong with Xiaogua and the others, then they would all be idiots. What happened? Everyone whispered to each other, their expressions uncertain. "What are you doing?" The Dawn Academy instructor, sitting in the front row, stood up and pointed at the people from Arbor with a frown. Arbor didn't seem to care at all. He ordered people to drag the 10 students from Hippo Academy off the stage and walk towards the open space at the side. Suddenly, Xiaogua opened his eyes and pounced on the little fatty who was holding his arm like a madman. It was about to bite little fatty's shoulder. Arbor punched the left side of Xiaogua's face, causing several teeth to fly out. Xiaogua spat out a mouthful of blood. A silver needle pierced the back of Xiaogua's neck. Arbor's attack was fast, ruthless, and accurate. Xiaogua was stunned for less than a second, and then his head drooped again. What are you doing?" When the instructor of the Changguang Academy saw her extremely cold expression and arrogant behavior, he couldn't help but get angry. Xiaomu turned her head and swept him an incomparably chilly gaze. The Changguang Academy instructor was frightened by the power in her eyes. He couldn't help but take half a step back. "Move them over there." Arbor was in an extremely bad mood at this time. She pointed to a place and said softly, Little Fatty and the others, of course, had no objections. They directly moved the 10 people over and placed them on the ground one by one. Arbor moved her finger, and a stream of holy water shot out from her fingertips. Her left hand swiped the air, and a piece of medicinal powder was sprinkled down. It floated straight into everyone's mouths and noses. Chapter 1994. What kind of powder did you put in? The Chunguang Academy's instructor cried out in alarm. He quickly covered his mouth and nose with his sleeves to prevent the powder from entering his nostrils. Wow, it smells so good. What kind of powder is this? After smelling it, my whole body feels comfortable, and I feel like the profound energy in my body is circulating faster. Yeah, it feels better than the profound recovery elixir. Some of the students standing behind Arbor inhaled and exhaled, scrambling to absorb the remaining fragrance of the powder in the air. Don't smell it. You don't even know what it is, yet you dare to indiscriminately smell it. What if it's poison? What should we do? The Chunguang Academy's instructor angrily reprimanded the students beside him. Instructor, I feel that the profound energy that was consumed in the fight just now has been restored by at least a third. Yes, I also feel that way. Ridiculous. The Chunguang Academy's instructor was still covering his nose and mouth. He angrily glared at the two students who were trying to undermine him. How can there be such an instant powder in this world? Stop daydreaming. Be wary of any trickery. All of you hold your breath. Breathing was naturally not something that the Chunguang Academy's instructor could control. Since they couldn't get through to the instructor, the students could only shut their mouths in resentment. However, they were still secretly absorbing the powder. Arbor was too lazy to pay attention to the self-righteous instructor. With a flip of her palm, 10 shining silver needles appeared between her fingers. Like a fairy scattering flowers, the needles pierced the chests of the 10 people in front of her. The 10 people from Hippo Academy opened their eyes at the same time and spat out a mouthful of black blood. The Chunguang Academy's instructor cried out in alarm and shrieked, You, quickly stop. Quickly call the arena's administrator over. Don't tell me that they're just going to watch this little witch casually harm other academy students. Who are you calling a little witch? Qi Xianxian angrily shouted. If you don't understand what others are doing, can you please shut your mouth? Mo Yin's group had already arrived at Arbor's side. Their expressions were indifferent as they glanced at the Chunguang Academy's instructor, who was making a ruckus. Get out of the way. Yuan Shichun flicked her finger, and a ray of spirit energy shot at the Chun Optics Institute's instructor's knee, causing him to kneel on the ground. Following that, a gust of wind was sent towards him, and the Chunguang Academy's instructor was swept away like a piece of trash. With a bam, he fell onto the seats and crushed a few chairs. Xiaomu simply didn't look at that Chunguang Academy's instructor in the eye. She took out a porcelain bottle and poured out 10 pills. Her fingers swiftly tapped those 10 people's acupoints from a distance, forcing the 10 people from Hippo Academy to simultaneously open their mouths. 10 pills were tossed into the mouths of the 10 people. They melted in their mouths, leaving only a faint medicinal fragrance in their mouths. This Grandmaster's medical skills are amazing. This old man admires you. A white-haired old man walked out from the Shuntian Starlight Academy. He gave Arbor a friendly smile and even cupped his hands politely. Isn't that Starlight Academy's alchemy Grandmaster Zhou? Even Grandmaster Zhou is so respectful towards this young lady. It seems that this young lady's medical skills are really amazing. Arbor turned his head and very politely returned a bow to Grandmaster Zhou. Senior is too kind. I don't deserve to be called a Grandmaster. It's just that I have studied medicine with my master for a few years and know a little about it. Hey, little Grandmaster, you're too modest. Grandmaster Zhou smiled and waved his hand. At this time, the 10 Hippo Academy students on the ground slowly woke up. Catch up on yesterday's 2 chapters. Today's 10,000 chapters would still be around 12 in the morning. Chapter 1995. Shagua, who was the leader, looked at the group of people around him blankly. He forced himself to sit up slowly and asked with a puzzled expression, What happened? Arbor moved her fingers, and several talismans glowed with a faint blue light. With a whoosh, they disappeared into the foreheads of the 10 people from Hippo Academy. You were poisoned, and the other party used a type of forbidden curse on you. During the confrontation just now, you completely lost control of your emotions and attacked us mercilessly. Xiao Mu explained dryly. Go back and properly recuperate. There's nothing wrong at the moment. Then, she threw a porcelain bottle to Shagua. Take 1 pill of this medicine every day. You should recover in 3 days. Thank you. The moment Shagua opened his mouth, he felt his mouth leaking air, so he hastily covered his mouth and forced an awkward smile at Xiao Mu and the others. Although he didn't know what had happened, he could tell from everyone's expressions that something bad had happened. Do you remember when you lost consciousness? Mo Yin suddenly asked. Shagua frowned and thought hard for a while, then shook his head blankly. No, I don't remember. I only remember that I went out with my friends, as usual this morning. When we walked past a carriage with a black awning on the street, we saw the curtain of the carriage lift slightly. Other than that, it seems that nothing out of the ordinary happened. Arbor nodded. This person's method of poisoning is very shrewd. No wonder you were poisoned. Thank you for your help, Miss Xiao. Shagua led the group of Hippo Academy students who had struggled to get up. They bowed again to Arbor, then left with the students. Arbor looked coldly in the direction they left. With a flick of her sleeve, a row of tiny black poison-tailed butterflies darted out of her sleeve and chased after Shagua and the others. Mai Chao's section break. Song State, southeast of the 3 upper states. Overlooking the entire Song State, it was like a fairyland shrouded in clouds and mist. Celestial mountains rose and hundreds of birds danced. Because it was southeast, separated from China and the underworld by the great forest to the north and the Sea of Forgetfulness to the west, it was relatively safe. For over 100 years, Song Prefecture had never experienced war. The people lived and worked in peace and harmony. Recently, in the capital of the Song Prefecture, Phoenix the Arch City, the most talked about thing was that Song Prefecture's great emperor had acknowledged his 4th son and brought the mother and son back to the Imperial Palace. Imperial Palace, South Qiao Hall, in a corner of the West Court. A man in a white robe was lazily lying on the stone table in the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Using his slender fingertips, he gently stirred a small cup of viburnum wine. A white jade cup rolled back and forth between his fingertips. The man supported his forehead with one hand, bored to death. Fourth Highness, Fourth Highness, Fourth Highness. The man's voice sounded as if he had just woken up from a deep sleep. Your Highness the 4th Prince, His Highness the Crown Prince, 2nd Prince, and 3rd Prince's carriages have arrived at Donggu Gate one after another. Your Highness the 4th Prince, please tidy up your appearance and go to the main hall to welcome the 3 princes. Gulp! The wine cup in a man's hand fell onto the stone table, and a thin and long stream of viburnum wine spilled out, slowly flowing along the cracks of the stone. Extremely boring. Your Highness, Your Highness. The young eunuch near him was almost scared to death. He scrambled to the ground and kowtowed repeatedly. Your Highness, the 3 princes are about to enter the main gate. Chapter 1996. Whoosh! The man lifted the hem of his robe and stood up, striding toward the main hall. Let's go. Your Highness, Your Highness. Looking at his slovenly His Highness with his waist-length hair and lazy appearance, the young eunuch wanted nothing more than to go up and cry. His Highness the 4th Prince was too careless. His pitch-black boots stepped through the door, and with a casual flick of his sleeve, he saw 3 tall and slender youths standing inside the main hall. The man's eyes flickered, and he laughed loudly. Duan Yu was unaware of the 3 elder brothers' arrival. Please forgive Duan Yu for not going out to meet you. The 3 youths turned around. All of them were spirited and handsome, with dashing brows and bright eyes. Only the slightly older man at the front had an abnormally pale complexion. 4th brother. That man nodded at him with a smile. How could you forget again? You have already returned to the palace with royal father and announced to the world that you are our Tsangzhou's fourth prince. Your real name is Rongli. Oh, Duan Yu interrupted the crown prince's words with a grin and waved his hand. It's only a name, nothing more than a title. It doesn't matter what I'm called. Fourth brother, eldest brother is right. I've been used to people calling me Duan Yu for the past 20 years. Hearing someone call me Rongli, or Rongli, I really don't know who they're calling. Duan Yu lifted his robe and sat down in front of the table in an indecent manner. He pursed his lips at the three youths and said, Elder brothers came from afar just to talk to younger brother about such a trivial matter? Of course not. Tsangzhou's crown prince smiled faintly. On his slightly pale face, a pair of pitch-black eyes stared fixedly at this younger brother. To tell the truth, ever since royal father brought this younger brother back several days ago, he had never understood this person. You could say that he didn't care about trifles, but one could see that he was meticulous and reserved in his thoughts. You could say that he was a profound person, but he treated everyone as if he didn't care about anything. He would smile brightly when he saw people, as if he was magnanimous and wasn't afraid of anything being said. Even though the streets and alleys of the imperial city were currently filled with all kinds of legends about this fallen fourth prince, he didn't seem to care at all. Fourth brother. During the trip to the imperial ancestral temple tomorrow, Imperial Father will personally record your and noble consort Duan's names into the imperial family genealogy. We brothers have come to congratulate you first. Duan Yu guffawed and waved his hand as he said, Elder brother is treating me like an outsider. It's just a small matter. There's no need for you to come here personally. You could just send someone to pass on a message. This is a big event for fourth brother. How can we not come to congratulate you? The second prince said with a smile. Then many thanks, elder brothers. Duan Yu. Oh no, Rongli thanks elder brothers for their great kindness. Ali, actually, according to the usual practice, as long as a child of the Tsangzhou royal family is born, regardless of gender, 3 days after birth, they will be taken to the imperial ancestral temple by someone from the imperial clan's council of elders to undergo an inheritance ceremony. However, Duan Yu merely smiled and didn't say anything as he listened to them continue their conversation. At such a time, all he had to do was listen, and there was no need for him to interject or express any other opinion. The royal family of the Tsang Prefecture originally inherited the bloodline of the ancient demon emperor. Unfortunately, more than 1,000 years ago, a powerful figure in the clan obtained this inheritance. Since then, no one else obtained this inheritance. This powerful figure who obtained the inheritance of the ancient demon emperor was the founding monarch of our Tsang Prefecture. Duan Yu creased his brows, but didn't say anything. Chapter 1997. Fourth brother, if you can obtain the inheritance of the demonic blood during this trip to the imperial ancestral temple, your future encounters will definitely be very different from before, the third prince said with a smile. Fourth brother has only returned home for a few days. However, this older brother has heard royal father mention many times that fourth brother is gifted and extraordinarily intelligent. Presumably, only someone like fourth brother can obtain the favor of the ancient inheritance. Duan Yu smiled but didn't say anything. He merely swept a mocking gaze over the second and third princes. Aren't these two people acting a little too anxious? He hadn't even gone to the imperial ancestral temple, yet they were already rushing over to pressure him. On the other hand, although his eldest brother, the crown prince, looked a bit sickly, he was far more scheming and courageous than those two idiots. It was no wonder that no one could shake his position as crown prince, even though he had been sick all these years. The crown prince of Tsang Prefecture chuckled. Second brother, third brother, the inheritance of the devil emperor also depends on chance. That's true. The second prince pursed his lips into a smile. To think of our Rong clan's most outstanding son, Prince Qing Rongqing. When he was born, it was said that the sky was filled with splendor. In the entire Tsangzhou, there was only day and no night. Duan Yu nodded with a grin. Regarding this prince of Qing's legend, He had already heard many legends along the way before he even set foot in Phoenix Emperor City's territory. This heir was 2 years older than him, and it was said that he was the youngest person in the entire Song Prefecture to break through to the God Realm before the age of 25. There were various versions of the legends about this heir Rong, and they were extremely vivid. Duan Yu had heard no less than 17 to 18 versions. The most outrageous one was that heir Rong was born with 8 heads and 16 arms. Even spiders didn't seem to be that scary. 3 days after the heir of Prince Qing was born, he was carried to the Imperial Ancestral Temple by the Council of Elders. The second prince smiled slightly, and there was a hint of schadenfreude in his smile. However, he didn't receive any of the Demon Emperor's inheritance that time. Duan Yu tilted his head and nodded vigorously. That's truly regretful. Fourth brother, you don't know. For someone as talented as Crown Prince Qing, he will have another chance to enter the Imperial Ancestral Temple after 18 years. He will have a second chance to obtain the ancient inheritance. Oh, Duan Yu nodded. Unfortunately, although Prince Qing's son possesses outstanding talent, he was still unable to obtain the acknowledgement of the devil bloodline. Duan Yu nodded vigorously and said with a nod of understanding, Elder brother wants to advise me not to have high expectations, right? As long as there was no expectation, there would naturally be no disappointment. Thank you for your reminder, big brother. Little brother is very grateful. You? The third prince was momentarily speechless. He indeed wanted to let this talented fourth brother know that it was not so easy to obtain the inheritance of the Devil Emperor. Of course, he had selfish motives and wanted to first strike this person's self-confidence, but this young man in front of him was too cooperative. He hadn't even said anything yet, but this fourth brother had already spoken such discouraging words. This unconventional guy made him momentarily speechless and didn't know how to continue the conversation. Song Prefecture's crown prince, Rong Li, smiled faintly and reached out to pick up the teacup that a servant handed over. He took a sip. Ali, we heard that noble consort Duan's body is slightly unwell due to the fatigue from the journey. Chapter 1998. We have prepared a meager gift for Her Highness the noble consort to nurse her health. We hope that fourth brother will not decline. Then many thanks, elder brother. After fourth brother visits the Imperial Ancestral Temple tomorrow, Royal Father will probably appoint a residence for fourth brother. When fourth brother moves in at that time, this older brother will come and disturb you again. Duan Yu nodded with a grin. After exchanging a few more pleasantries with his 3 elder brothers, he personally escorted the trio out of South Qiao Hall. His gaze instantly chilled as he indifferently swept his gaze over the trio's departing figures. After a long time, he finally turned around and followed the garden path to the study. Your Highness, the junior eunuch followed this master with trepidation. For some reason, this master had clearly just arrived at South Qiao Hall not long ago and was usually smiling, but for some reason, he often felt a chilly wind blowing from his heart. In the Phoenix Tharch city, which one of them was a simple character? Bring the gifts they sent to the study first. Yes. Duan Yu entered the study and kicked the door closed without any decorum. He slumped onto the low couch in front of the window and half reclined for a while with his legs crossed and head propped up in a sloppy manner, until a junior eunuch knocked on the door and entered. He led a group of junior royal maids and eunuchs to move everything into the study. Your Highness, Duan Yu nodded and waved his hand to dismiss them. Afterwards, he flashed to the pile of gifts. He spent the entire afternoon in the study opening the gifts one by one. After carefully inspecting them for a while, he put them back one by one. After changing some of the things in the gift boxes, he threw a few more. By the time he finished admiring everything, it was almost dusk. Duan Yu sat down in front of the desk and stared blankly at the swaying shadows of the trees outside the window. After a while, he opened a secret compartment under the desk. He took out a rolled-up painting from inside. He supported his forehead with one hand and slowly unrolled the painting with the other. Duan Yu's gaze landed on the woman's expressionless jade-like face in the painting. His fingers caressed it lightly as he muttered to himself, "When will you come? Your Highness, do you want to light a lamp and serve a meal?" Duan Yu heaved a long sigh of relief before rolling up the painting again and placing it in the secret compartment under the desk. He stood up and strode outside. "Let's go to Chungran Hall." A moment later, the head palace maid of Chungran Hall hurriedly came in to report. "Nyang Nyang, His Highness has arrived." Noble consort Duan happily stood up. Just as she was about to go out and welcome him, she saw her son's handsome figure appear at the door and stride towards her. "Mother." Duan Yu bounced to his mother's side, his eyes curving into crescents. Old Nanny Lin, who had taken care of Duan Yu and his mother for many years in Seacombe Planet's Duan family, said with a smile, "His Highness the Fourth Prince probably hasn't eaten dinner yet, right? This old servant will ask someone to serve a meal." Noble consort Duan smiled as she took her son's hand and poked his forehead with her finger. "This child, you don't have a proper appearance all day long. Look at your lazy attire. Do you think this is still Seacombe Planet's Duan family? Mother, does this son need to dress up like a flower to come to your place?" Noble consort Duan burst into laughter and glared at him in both amusement and annoyance. She raised her hand to accept the fine-toothed comb that the head palace maid handed over and casually combed her son's long hair. She couldn't help but mutter, "Son, you're not young anymore." After you return from the Imperial Ancestral Temple and acknowledge your ancestors, how about Mother have your royal father arrange a marriage for you? Chapter 1999. Duan Yu nearly jumped up from his stool when he heard this. He hastily grabbed his mother's hand and said, "Mother, don't randomly matchmake Sun. At Sun's age, Sun is still only an infant in Sangzhou." Her Highness Noble Consort Duan almost burst out in laughter, and she lightly smacked the back of her son's head. "Nonsense! Mother, Sun is speaking the truth. Look at eldest brother. He's nearly 40 years old, but he hasn't married and had children yet. Is there a need to rush this matter? But your eldest brother already has a marriage partner. What about you?" Noble consort Duan asked softly. "Ali, tell Mother, do you have a girl that you fancy?" "No way." Duan Yu casually tossed a strand of long hair behind his head and pulled his mother's hand as he said, "Mother, if I fancy a girl, why wouldn't I tell you? Your son has grown up and can't be controlled by his mother. Don't keep saying these words to deceive me. I keep feeling that my son already has someone he likes." Duan Yu's smile stiffened, but he immediately broke into a flower-like grin. "Mother, there really isn't. Oh, that's right. I came over to bring gifts for eldest brother, second brother, and third brother. They sent over many tonics." Duan Yu lowered his voice and whispered into his mother's ear, "Son has already inspected them one by one. They're all pretty good medicinal herbs, so Mother can just take them. Later, I'll have the royal physician come over and prescribe 2 food therapy prescriptions for Mother to eat together." "You mischievous spirit." Noble consort Duan pursed her lips and smiled as she patted her son's forehead. "Hey, you should carefully consider what Mother told you just now. Son, you should get married early. Mother can also hold a grandson or something as soon as possible." Duan Yu looked up at the sky, speechlessly. "Mother, I already said that the average lifespan in Sangzhou is over 200 years old. Your son is only 20 years old. He'll only be 21 after the new year. Is it worth the rush?" "That's right." Noble consort Duan sighed, her voice revealing a faint trace of loneliness. "People like you who embark on the path of cultivation easily have lifespans of over 100 years old. But Mother is only a normal person. Mother is worried that in this lifetime. Mother, don't worry. In this world, there are countless elixirs that can prolong one's life. Moreover, I have a friend who is a very outstanding alchemist. Don't worry, the next time we meet, I will ask her for more elixirs that can prolong one's life. I guarantee that Mother will be able to live healthily until 200 to 300 years old." Seeing his glib tongue, Noble consort Duan couldn't help but roll her eyes at him and laugh. "Friend? What kind of friend is this? Is it a girl?" Duan Yu twitched his mouth and quickly shook his head. "No, it's a man, a big beard." Noble consort Duan looked at him helplessly. "So useless. Look at you, my son. You're young and talented, and you're so handsome. How come you can't even get a wife after 20 years? Duan simply wanted to flee. Whenever his mother brought up this topic, it was as if she had been scared witless. She repeatedly brought up the matter of his wife. It was so difficult to divert her attention. Son, you're going to the Imperial Ancestral Temple tomorrow. Have you prepared your luggage? Mother, what luggage do I need? The things I want are all in my inner world. Oh, that's right. My son is a very impressive, great mystic cultivator. Duan couldn't help but feel helpless. His mother was only a normal woman. After failing to trigger her mystic meridians, she had never come into contact with cultivation in her entire life. Chapter 2000. So his mother simply didn't know what cultivation realm he was currently in. In her opinion, great mystic cultivators seemed to be the most powerful cultivators in the end, that after accompanying his mother for a meal and listening to her nag for a while, Duan finally returned to South Xiao Hall. He cultivated in the inner hall until dawn, when a steward eunuch came to invite him to bathe and change his clothes. This day was destined to be an extremely busy and convoluted day. Duan section break. The sky was just beginning to brighten. Prince Mo and Miss Chiao's figures both appeared on the side of the empty street. Arbor coldly gazed at the black canopied carriage parked on the side of the street. Just as she was about to walk up, Mo gently grabbed her wrist. "Stay here. I'll go take a look first," Mo said softly as she leaped over. Just as she landed in front of the black canopied carriage, a scarlet flame flew up and burned the carriage's curtains to ashes. There was no one inside the carriage, but there were several poison-tailed butterflies that had fallen inside. Arbor quickly walked to his side and stuck her head out to take a look inside the carriage. Her expression turned even colder. That person shouldn't have escaped too far. "Let's chase," Arbor said coldly. Mo naturally nodded and hooked his wife's waist. With a leap, Little Seven turned into a meandering golden light. The two jumped onto the dragon's back and took advantage of the fact that the sky had yet to brighten to give chase for several kilometers. Finally, they discovered two black flying eagles in the desolate outskirts of the city. They were carrying two panic-stricken men as they fled with all their might. Arbor coldly narrowed her eyes, and her gaze landed on the eagles' backs. Her pupils contracted, and a red light shot out from her eyes. The two men, who were lying on the eagles' backs and urging them to speed up, suddenly felt a gust of wind behind their heads. When they turned back to look, their hearts almost jumped out of their chests. They saw two large trees that had sprouted from the ground flying straight at their backs. The two men quickly patted the eagles beneath them and urged them to dodge in fear. But how could they make it in time? Once Arbor's telekinesis was activated, it was absolutely seamless and as fast as lightning. With just a quick thought, she would be able to use any external object within 100 meters at will. Boom! Boom! The two of them were pulled by the trees, and their flying speed immediately slowed down. A line of fire immediately landed on the backs of the two eagles. As soon as their feathers were ignited, two shrill eagle cries came from the sky. How could the two eagles withstand the roasting of the purple flame? Smoke rose from their bodies as they tumbled down from the sky and crashed heavily onto the ground. Mo took a step forward and appeared in front of them with her arms around Arbor's waist. The two of them tried to resist, but were unexpectedly kicked in the chest by Prince Mo's two flying kicks. Their entire bodies rolled backwards, and their backs hit the ground heavily. Arbor raised his finger and tossed two dictum talismans to the two of them without hesitation. "Who are you?" She knew that after the mastermind discovered that the poison and puppet talismans on Shagwa's group from Hippo Academy had been removed, they would definitely come to investigate. Thus, she had the poison-tailed butterfly follow the students from Hippo Academy and wait for them to come to her door. "We are disciples of the Clear Sky Sect." "Clear Sky Sect? I didn't look for you, but you took every opportunity to cause trouble for me." Arbor's eyes were filled with anger, and her fingers were tightly clenched into fists. Chapter 2001. When the competition is over, I'll look for you. Arbor's eyes flashed, and she flicked 2 explosion talismans at the 2 of them. In an instant, there were 2 loud booms. She didn't turn back to look at them again. She pulled Prince Imo and turned to leave. Jojo. Imo Lien gently pulled her little hand back and hugged her to his side. He lowered his head and gazed deeply at her. The people from Clear Sky Sect are like a group of rats in the corners, strolling out from time to make things difficult for you. How about you leave them to me to deal with? Arbor shook her head and gritted her teeth stubbornly. No, I want to deal with Fangu and Fanchua personally. She wanted to personally end this nightmare of the past. No one could do it for her. All right, since you've already decided. Imo Lien raised his hand to stroke her slightly messy hair. Then I'll support you. I'll send people to investigate their location first. As long as we have the exact location, we don't have to worry about them escaping. I'll send people to restrain them first. When you get there, you'll deal with them personally. Arbor threw herself into his arms and shifted her head on his chest. She said in a muffled voice, "Am I too willful?" "Nonsense." Imo Lien smiled and patted her head. "My Jojo is so considerate. How can you be willful?" Imo Lien pulled her little hand and headed in the direction of Serenity Inn. When the 2 returned to the inn, the sky was already bright. Hu Shurchin and the others also came downstairs one after another. Looking up, Hu Shurchin, who was leaning on the side, happened to see the 2 walking in hand. "Oh, so early. Did you go out to do something naughty again?" Facing the morning light, Hu Shurchin smiled at Arbor. Arbor reached out and picked up 2 boxes of pastries. "I met someone selling crispy meat patties at the street corner. I only bought 3 patties for 1 spirit coin. There aren't many. First come, first served. My Jojo is the most considerate." The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's eyes curved into crescents as he smiled. He gently floated over to Arbor and lifted his hand to take the 2 boxes of desserts from her hands. "I'm a little hungry. Hey, shopkeeper, give me another bowl of porridge." "Huh, you're Jojo. Who's yours?" Imo Lien rolled her eyes at young Master Phone. She pulled Arbor to the table and took the millet porridge from the owner. "Eat." Arbor took out 2 more hibiscus cakes from the lunchbox and placed them in front of Shurchin. "Yes." The little fellow propped up her chin with one hand as she stirred the boiling porridge in the bowl. She harumphed and said, "If Duanyu was here, he could finish these 2 plates of hibiscus cakes in one go." Imo Lien's hand, that was holding the chopsticks, paused for a moment. She picked up a piece of hibiscus cake and put it into her mouth. "Oh." Shurchin pursed her lips with a spurious smile and patted Arbor's arm. "Why did you suddenly think of that dunce out of the blue?" "Nope. I just thought of him when I saw this plate of hibiscus cakes." Arbor pointed at Imo Lien and said, "Hubby doesn't like to eat sweets, but Duanyu likes them. Men who like to eat sweets are usually more feminine." Imo Lien took a bite of the hibiscus cake and felt that it wasn't to her taste, so she tossed it to the side. A certain venerable immortal, who had already eaten 2 pieces of hibiscus cake, suddenly felt that he couldn't bring his chopsticks down. "Do you freaking know how to speak? Who are you calling feminine?" "Jojo, don't listen to Imo Lien's nonsense. This is all a matter of taste." Shurchin thought about it, but still picked up the 3rd piece of hibiscus cake. Chapter 2002. Arbor propped up her chin and turned to look at Prince Imo Lien. "Do you have something to say?" "No." Imo Lien calmly finished her porridge and put down the bowl. Arbor puffed up her cheeks and looked at him in a huff. "Liar. You clearly paused and wanted to say something just now. Do you think Jojo is a fool?" Prince Imo couldn't help but chuckle. Ji-Chen's eyes curved, and she said with a nod, "Jojo, it's good that you think that way. He's a liar. Look, he even hid such a small matter from you, let alone that kind of major matter." "Shut up." Prince Imo directly stuffed half a steamed bun into Ji-Chen's mouth and turned to look at Arbor. "It's not a major matter. It's just that I recently received a rather interesting rumor about Duanyu." "What rumor?" Arbor asked curiously. 4th Duan was born in the Sangzhou Rong clan. Sangzhou Rong clan? What kind of place is that? Arbor expressed her confusion. Sangzhou, one of the 3 upper provinces. Ji-Chen explained with a smile. The divine province, Sangzhou, and Underworld Province are the 3 upper provinces. Don't you know this, my Jojo? Arbor pursed her lips and took a bite of the hibiscus cake. How could I remember so much? When he told her about the 3 prefectures and 6 prefectures, she only thought about it once in her head. Most of it was just a passing thought. The little girl stirred the porridge with a spoon and asked curiously, Sangzhou Rong clan? Duan Yu? Mo Lien nodded. I received news that Duan Yu returned to Sangzhou's capital, Phoenix Emperor City, with the Emperor of Sangzhou a few days ago. His mother, the youngest daughter of the Duan family head, was promoted to noble consort Duan by the Emperor of Sangzhou. Isn't there a concealed weapons patrician family in the Divine Province? Immerse. Mo Lien nodded. The Divine Province's Duan clan can be said to be 4th Duan's family. However, they probably haven't interacted much for over a century. Arbor pursed her lips. If it were me, I wouldn't acknowledge this kind of father. Oh, my Joe. The venerable peach blossom immortal smiled so widely that his beautiful eyes narrowed into slits. That's the great emperor of Tsang Prefecture, the most honorable of the upper 3 prefectures, together with the great emperor of the Divine Land and the great emperor of the Underworld. They were known as the 3 great emperors of the 3 upper continents. If it were my Qiao, would you not want such a father? Why him? After tossing Duan Yu and his son on Seakong Planet for 20 years, elderly patriarch Duan had finally raised Duan Yu up after much difficulty, yet he brought him back with a single sentence. How could there be such a beautiful thing in this world? I wouldn't want a father like that, even if you gave it to me. Not only that, a family like that should be cut off all contact with. Arbor thought of something, and his eyes flashed with a sharp light. Mo Lien chuckled as he rubbed the little fellow's head. He understood clearly in his heart. His little girl had such a strong temperament. If you wanted her to treat you with sincerity, you had to pay a heavy price first. Otherwise, the little fellow would bury her heart deep and absolutely wouldn't allow you to get close to her. The venerable peach blossom immortal clicked his tongue and nodded repeatedly. Jojo's words are reasonable. In that case, 4th Duan is only someone who covets glory, splendor, and wealth? Arbor pursed his lips tightly and didn't utter a word. Jojo, this matter isn't up to 4th Duan to say that he doesn't want to go back. Prince Mo couldn't resist defending 4th Duan after some thought. When Arbor thought of the great emperor of Sangzhou's power, he felt relieved. Sleep soundly. Wake up to catch up on 2 nights. Chapter 2003. After all, with Duan Si's current power, it was impossible for him to go against Sangzhou's emperor. Sangzhou's emperor could probably wipe out Seakong Planet's Duan family 18 times over with a single finger. How could Duan Si win against them? Arbor felt a trace of anger at her heart, probably because she thought of her background and those unreasonable people from the 3 states. If they force me to go back, I'll definitely make their lives worse than death, and their homes will never be at peace. When she spat out this sentence, Crown Prince Mo and young Master Feng could both sense her intense emotional turmoil, and her tone was laced with intense loathing. Prince Feng quickly patted the little fellow's head. Don't worry. With me here, no one can force you to do anything. Mo Lien glared at Prince Feng's hand, and the latter glanced at her. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Duan Muqing and the others coming down from the 3rd floor, so he retracted his hand. Hey, you guys are so early. The little fatty quickly walked down the stairs and dragged a stool to sit in front of them. Speaking of which, we should be able to enter the top 30 in 2 days. Mata took a bun, broke off a piece, and stuffed it into her mouth. I wonder if they'll play any tricks in the finals. Zhou Danjin looked at the students with an indescribable gaze. Instructor Zhou, if you have any concerns, why don't you share them with us? Zhou Danjin looked at the crowd. I think that since everyone knows that Xiao Qiao has a sacred beast by her side, the finals won't be held back. I reckon that the final match won't be carried out in a face-off situation. This was something that everyone understood. They knew that Jojo had sacred beasts, and perhaps more than one, but still wanted to fight with her for first place in the finals. That would be blind. Then, Instructor Zhou, what kind of tricks do you think the old men from the prefecture's first-class academies will play? Zhou Danjin sighed and shook his head. Let's wait and see. If the other party's request was too outrageous, it wouldn't just be the top academies that would be dissatisfied. Don't tell me they want us to clean up some zombie base again? The little fatty cried out with a piece of pastry in his mouth. Wei Wei shook his head. They're not that stupid. They didn't say that we can't use mystic beasts to sweep through the zombie base. That's right. Everyone nodded in agreement. If they wanted to target him, those old fogies of the academy would probably issue a rule that prohibited the use of any profound beasts in the finals. Arbor looked disinterested as he said expressionlessly, if we don't summon Bloodblaze and the others, do we really have no way to deal with those people? If those teachers from prestigious schools had such thoughts in their hearts, they would advise their students to take care of themselves. Instructor Hu smiled and said, Xiao Qiao has shown her medical skills in front of everyone again. If they intend to target our academy, they should have taken this into consideration. Qi Xian sneered. Isn't that their trump card, the inner world seal? Instructor Zhou smacked his lips and coughed lightly. Perhaps this time, they will make it clear that talismans are not allowed. Everyone raised their eyebrows. Don't worry, Minter. We've already experienced such hardships in Qian Luo's underground arena. Lu Yu chuckled. Mata interrupted from the side. That's right. Speaking of which, we have to thank the teachers for their strict training. That's right. Zhou Danji nodded. Didn't the teachers put in so much effort for you? Chapter 2004. Only those who can survive in the most arduous environment will naturally not fear anything in the future. Everyone silently rolled their eyes. Therefore, everyone should still carry some medicine and the like with them. Otherwise, when the time comes, there will be new rules for the finals and catch you off guard. Understood, instructor. Understood. All right, since everyone has eaten and drank their fill, let's set off. Everyone stood up and walked towards Shanhua Martial Arts Arena in groups. There won't be any problems with drawing lots after this. The remaining teams are probably about the same in terms of strength. Zhou Danjin said, Xin, go up and draw lots today and tomorrow. Miss Qiao glanced at Instructor Zhou from the corner of her eyes. She didn't expect this instructor to be so smart. He actually knew that she was tired of drawing lots. Qi Xin naturally nodded in agreement and didn't have any other objections. More than half of the teams that were eliminated previously didn't leave the arena. Although they lost the right to continue competing, they all chose to stay and observe the remaining matches. After all, they could learn a lot of actual combat experience from observing. This was a rare opportunity, so no one was willing to give up on it. Moreover, the students that were eliminated from the competition were all stifled and wanted to know who the top 3 would be this year. Arbor sat down and watched Qi Xin go up the arena. There were 170 teams participating in this round. The main referee, Elder Hong, announced loudly as soon as he went up the stage, the top 10 academies of the 6 prefectures have been decided at the last minute. The top 30 teams must be determined today. Even if it takes until dawn, the top 30 must be determined. Does everyone have the confidence to continue? Yes. The representatives of the 170 academies answered loudly. Qi Xin silently cursed in her mind. Instructor Zhou and the rest guessed correctly. Look, this troublemaker is probably coming soon. After drawing the number 18 bamboo stick, Qi Xin and the academy representative who also held the number 18 bamboo stick looked at each other. They didn't say anything else and directly jumped off the stage to return to their seats. Ma Chao's section break, Song Province. Our dear Duanyu, who left before dawn, sat in the imperial carriage and swayed back and forth as he dozed off. The young eunuch who accompanied him knelt by his side. From time to time, he had to stretch out his hands to support his master's head, so as to prevent him from hitting his head against the window. The noon sunlight seeped in through the thick curtains of the carriage and scattered on his jade-like face. Even Prince Qing, who was known as the #1 handsome man in Phoenix Emperor City, couldn't compare to the 4th prince's gorgeous facial features and charming appearance. The little eunuch thought silently in his heart. Then, he heard a low voice coming from outside the carriage. "Your Highness, we have arrived at Mount Taiyuan. Your Highness, your Highness." The eunuch reached out to support his master's drooping head. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. "Your Highness, it's time to prepare to climb the mountain." Duan Yu opened his bewildered eyes, and his watery, peach blossom eyes were at a loss. Prince Qing, together with Prince Qing, requests an audience with His Majesty. A shrill voice sounded beside her ear. Duan Yu instantly lost his drowsiness. When he recalled the rumored eight-headed heir of Prince Qing, his eyes flickered. "Let's go take a look." Your Highness, please slow down." Before the eunuch could pull open the curtains, Duan Yu had already jumped off the carriage first. When he looked forward, he saw Sangzhou's crown prince, Rong Li, slowly alighting from the carriage with the help of two eunuchs. Make up for yesterday's 2 chapters. Tonight's 6 chapters later. Chapter 2005. Although Rong Li's physique was a bit frail, he looked refined and courteous. He could be considered an elegant young master. Duan Yu cupped his hands at him and strode to the carriage. He saw the Prince of Qing, who was wearing a green fur cloak, striding to the Sangzhou Emperor's carriage with a grin. He bowed and said, "Your Majesty, this subject brother has disturbed you." Duan Yu was a bit disappointed when he saw the Prince of Qing's round figure. Rumors were indeed rumors. Just by looking at the Prince of Qing's appearance, how good could the heir of King Qing be? As expected, the rumors were false. They were nothing more than exaggerated rumors passed down from person to person. Duan Yu pursed his lips and looked away. When he turned his head, he saw a tall young sir with an outstanding appearance and a very indifferent expression. He was wearing a thin, embroidered blue cloak as he walked forward. He was wearing a light green robe with several elegant green bamboos embroidered on the hem. The bright green hairpin in his hair shimmered faintly under the sunlight, setting off his snow-white face to appear aloof and indifferent. When his gaze landed on him, his footsteps paused, and he bowed at him. "Your Highness the 4th Prince." Duan Yu gaped as his gaze landed on that person. He hesitated for a moment before replying. "Qing? The heir of King Qing?" "Yes." The young sir nodded indifferently. Duan Yu instantly silently retracted his internal criticism. The father is the father, and the son is the son. The heir of King Qing's appearance was probably 99% similar to his mother's, however, this father and son pair was too festive. They were both dressed in green, and the heir of King Qing even had a green on his head. How much did he want to be green? At this moment, the Sangzhou Emperor also alighted from a carriage. The Emperor had a tall and sturdy figure and an imposing heroic aura. Based on appearance alone, Duan Yu naturally took after his beautiful mother. To think that he was still silently criticizing other people. In reality, he and his father were only slightly similar from head to toe in terms of their dashing eyebrows. In reality, even their temperaments were not similar. The Sangzhou Emperor nodded and said, "Quickly go up the mountain. Don't miss the auspicious hour." Mount Taiyuan was where the ancestral temple of the imperial family was located. Since the founding of the dynasty, every time the imperial family of the Song prefecture went up the mountain to pay their respects, no matter how high their status was. Even the emperor himself had to go up the mountain to pay his respects. They were not allowed to use carriages. Fortunately, everyone had some foundation in cultivation. Even if their talent wasn't that outstanding, it wouldn't take much effort for a great mystic cultivator to climb a mountain. Half an hour later, several palace maids and eunuchs without any cultivation base hurriedly followed their master's footsteps and arrived at the Taizong Temple on Mount Taiyuan. Emperor Sangzhou's expression was faintly agitated as he turned to Duan Yu and said, "Ali, enter the imperial ancestral temple with Qing." Duan Yu curiously glanced at Prince Qing's heir, Rong Qing. Didn't he say that he could only enter the imperial ancestral temple twice in his lifetime? Whether or not he could obtain the inheritance of the Devil Emperor would depend on his luck. Why now? Rong Qing didn't say anything and didn't even look back at Duan Yu. The two of them ascended the long steps of the imperial ancestral temple. After walking for at least half an hour, they finally entered the main hall of the Imperial Ancestral Temple. An elder with white hair and beard had already been waiting for them in the main hall for a long time. When he saw Duan Yu and Rongqing enter the Imperial Ancestral Temple one after the other, he greeted them with a smile. Qing also came. "Please wait a moment, Your Highness the Fourth Prince." "Qing, come in with me first." Duan Yu was very indifferent. In any case, he had never cared about this Devil Emperor's blood. Chapter 2006. As he watched the elder lead Rongqing inside, Duan Yu's heart did not ripple in the slightest. Prince Qing's heir was probably unwilling to give up and wanted to beat him to the punch and see if he could inherit even a wisp of the Devil Emperor's blood. Inside the inner hall, a gorgeous light suddenly flourished. The elder's excited cry came from inside. "Heir, is it going to succeed?" Just as the elder finished speaking, that light suddenly vanished without a trace. The white-haired elder shook his head and sighed deeply. It still won't work. Every time it was so close by, and the elder felt anxious watching from the side. When the two of them came out of the inner hall one after the other, Duan Yu specially paid attention to Prince Qing's heir, Rongqing's expression. Yet when he saw that fellow's unruffled expression without any change, he couldn't help but feel bored. What's up with this emotionless look on his face? Since you have no desires, then why do you keep coming to ask for the inheritance of the Devil Emperor's blood? Hence, it was merely a facade. "Your Highness, please." The elder finally walked up to Duan Yu and made a respectful gesture. Duan Yu nodded and followed the elder to the inner hall. He looked up. This inner hall was merely empty, and there was only a huge stone platform built in the center of the hall. A transparent crystal ball emitting a purple light was suspended high above the stone platform. The round crystal ball appeared very blurry under the illumination of the candlelight. As the crystal flashed, a speck of vermilion seemed to flash across the purple crystal ball. Duan Yu quickly walked up at the elder's signal and turned back to smile at him. "Elder, what if I inject spiritual energy into this crystal ball, and it can't bear the burden and explodes? What should I do then?" Duan Yu blinked and said, "At that time, where would I go to find another sealing ball that carries the inheritance of the Devil Emperor's blood for you?" The elder couldn't help but chuckle. "Your Highness, do your best. If you want to shatter this sealing ball in one go. It's impossible with just you." The elder forcefully swallowed his words. This kind of shrewd person naturally wouldn't say anything disobedient in front of Duan Yu. Duan Yu's hands came out from under his sleeves. Suddenly, a stream of water spirit appeared in his hands and shot straight at the inheritance sealing ball. After the spiritual energy landed on the inheritance seal, the entire sphere exploded with a blinding light. This kind of light was 1,000,000 times more dazzling than the light that burst out when Rongqing went in. The elder was completely stunned. Prince Qing's heir, Rongqing, who was standing in the outer hall, abruptly turned his head. His expressionless face finally revealed a hint of surprise. There was no lack of geniuses in this world. Standing outside the Imperial Ancestral Temple, waiting for the result of the inheritance, the Zhangzhou Emperor and the Crown Prince both looked up at the blinding divine light above the Imperial Ancestral Temple. Rongli secretly suppressed the gloominess in his eyes and thoughtfully raised his head to look at the place where the strong light appeared. "Ha ha!" Song Prefecture's great Emperor Rong Yuan couldn't help but laugh loudly. "Could it be my son? Your Majesty! Congratulations, Your Majesty!" The elder ran down the long steps leading to the Imperial Ancestral Temple and reported the good news repeatedly. "His Highness the Fourth Prince is starting to accept the inheritance. Where's my son?" The Emperor was so excited that his hands were shaking. The elder naturally also said excitedly, "His Highness is currently isolated. We can't approach for the time being." Chapter 2007. According to ancient records, the clan's descendants who obtain the supreme inheritance can take as little as 7 days to as many as several months. "Congratulations, Your Majesty!" "Congratulations, your majesty." The elder had a fawning smile on his face, but he was a bit alarmed that he had neglected His Highness the Fourth Prince earlier. Once this honorable and magnificent His Highness the Fourth Prince absorbed the Devil Emperor's bloodline inheritance, he would come out. In the future, he would become the most powerful and noblest person in the entire Roan clan. It was simply unimaginable what His Highness the Fourth Prince, who had just returned home, would achieve in the future. Songzhou's great emperor, Rong Yuan, was also very happy. For thousands of years, his fourth son had become the only person in the Roan clan who could obtain the Devil Emperor's bloodline inheritance. How could he not be excited and happy about this? At this very moment, Duan Yu, who was inside the inner hall, felt as if his entire body was being burned by a raging inferno. It was indescribably unbearable. His entire body had been sucked into that transparent inheritance sealing ball, and he circulated his qi to resist the heat that was drilling into his body. That scarlet ray of light sank into the depths of his glabella. Duan Yu abruptly opened his eyes, and he couldn't resist howling in rage. Damn it, this was too fucking painful. This damn inheritance. Was it trying to tear apart his conscious? At this moment, only he was very clear that his conscious seemed to be about to be evaporated by the heat. It was currently emitting waves of heat, causing his entire conscious to sink into an unbearably painful state. Duan Yu suddenly reached out his left hand and tightly gripped his right arm. When he looked down, he saw a very distinct red line of blood spreading up inch by inch from his left wrist, as if it was burning and tempering all the meridians in his body. This kind of pain from the reconstruction of his bloodline was truly unforgettable. Damn it, he didn't need this kind of inheritance, all right? It hurt. It hurt so much. Duan Yu only felt like he was a trapped beast tightly locked in that inheritance sealing ball, passively and dazedly accepting this kind of inheritance. A shrill howl broke through the summit of Songzhou's Imperial Ancestral Temple. Outside the Imperial Ancestral Temple, Crown Prince Rong Li's handsome face was gloomy. He lowered his eyes slightly to hide the strange look in his eyes. She really didn't expect that the son of her father's mistress would actually have such an opportunity. Not long after entering the palace, he had already obtained the favor of the Devil Emperor's inheritance and easily obtained the inheritance. Rong Li closed his eyes. When he turned his head to look at the emperor again, he regained his spring breeze-like smile. Imperial Father, the fact that fourth brother has such an opportunity this time is enough to prove that he is a person with great fortune. Rong Yuan was elated. Hearing the crown prince's words, he hurriedly nodded and said, "That's right. According to the rules, fourth brother should move to Taiji Palace in the future." What? Rong Li was caught off guard by his father's words. He raised his head in astonishment and asked, "Father, don't you plan to let fourth brother move out and live elsewhere?" Over the years, other than the crown prince of the Eastern Palace, which adult prince could stay in the palace? A faint sense of danger rose in the crown prince's heart. The great emperor shook his head. Fourth brother has obtained the inheritance of the demon emperor's bloodline. Naturally, he is different from others. Someone, pass on our decree. Hearing Father King's excited voice, Rong Li silently shut his mouth and lowered his eyes. He secretly clenched his fists and forcefully tightened his palms. Rong Li only withdrew his fingers when he felt a slight prickling pain. Chapter 2008. Rong Li only retracted his finger when he felt a slight stab of pain. Everyone said that inheritances were good, but they didn't know that Duan Yu enjoyed an extraordinary amount of pain when he received this inheritance. When he was in extreme pain, Duan Yu's fingers trembled as he wanted to take out a bottle of medicinal liquid from his inner world to replenish his energy. However, he soon discovered that he couldn't do anything else. Right now, even a strand of his hair probably didn't belong to him anymore. Meanwhile, the emperor outside cheerfully said, "Old Fourth has only moved into the palace for a few days, so there shouldn't be too many things in the original South Chiao Hall. Come over and move him to Taiji Palace first. Remember, Everything must be of the best quality. Yes. Crown Prince Ronly followed beside his father and said with a smile, if fourth brother knew that father treated him so well, he would definitely be very happy. How could he not be happy? Taiji Palace was second only to the Eastern Palace. Father was starting to value fourth brother. Previously, he didn't see father treating that son of his mistress very well after returning for so many days. Today's trip to the Imperial Ancestral Temple unearthed his potential, so father probably had some expectations for this son of his mistress. The Crown Prince of Tsangzhou turned his face away and tried his best to calm his emotions. He put on a face as bright as the moon and said, according to Elder, fourth brother probably still needs to enter closed-door cultivation for many days. How about this son first accompany father back to the palace? All right. Tsangzhou's emperor nodded. Since they were waiting here, they might as well return to the palace first. Moreover, they didn't know how long fourth would be in closed-door cultivation in the Imperial Ancestral Temple, so there was no use in waiting. With this in mind, Tsangzhou's emperor turned to instruct the elder, send people to guard the entrance of the Imperial Ancestral Temple. Don't let anyone sneak in and disturb fourth's cultivation. Yes, your majesty. The section break of the Imperial Ancestral Temple. It was already 10 o'clock at night. The Academy ranking competition to determine the top 30 was in full swing. Arbor was half leaning on Mo Lian's arm, so bored that he was about to fall asleep. Since the end of the battle with number 18, they had been sitting on the bench here for almost a day. Might as well go back to sleep, Miss Chiao muttered unhappily. Sigh, I wonder how long the competition will last. The instructors of the 6 prefectures' first-rate schools were quite willful. With just one sentence, everyone would accompany them and burn the midnight oil. Mo Yin reached out and stroked her head. Jojo, if you're tired, you can sleep for a while. It seemed that the competition had nothing to do with them. There probably wasn't any team that didn't have eyes that would point out their top academy to the stage and decide the outcome of the battle. Arbor nodded. He rested his head on Mo Yin's arm and closed his eyes. He really did fall asleep. In the middle of the night, a loud roar woke her up. Arbor opened her eyes in a daze and looked at the brightly lit Shenghua Gladiator Arena. She helplessly rolled her eyes and said, it's not over yet. Actually, it's not impossible to decide the top 30 tomorrow. Why is it so urgent to go to Brinset Island? Arbor raised her hand and yawned. She leaned her head on Mo Yin's body and adjusted her posture. Shantian Prefecture's Celestial Light Academy challenges the top academy. Suddenly, a shout fell into everyone's ears. Chapter 2009. This was like eating an iced watermelon on a summer day. Everyone suddenly felt their eyes brighten. Holy shit, someone actually came to challenge us. The little fatty jumped up excitedly. Go, 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 go. Let's go to the arena. Sitting here was really not fun at all. It wasn't easy for the Dawn Academy to be so happy to challenge them. Only a fool wouldn't go. Arbor rubbed her eyes, but her small hand was gently pulled down by Mo Lian. Then I'm going. The little guy stood up shakily and followed the crowd. Just as he took a step forward, he heard a young referee on the arena call out awkwardly, wrong, wrong. The Dawn Academy isn't challenging the top academies. The Dawn Academy just said that they're challenging. Cough, Starlight Academy. Bai Xia and the other two hurriedly stood up and walked towards the arena with a few seniors. When they passed by Arbor's group, they looked at them speechlessly. The little fatty was even more speechless. He slumped into his seat and said, crazy. They were blindly excited for half a day, but it turned out that the other party wasn't going to challenge them. What's the overall ranking of our academy now? I don't even know how they calculate the points. How can JoJo only be ranked 7th in the individual rankings? Exactly. I'm even suspecting that there's something fishy about the way they calculate the points. Arbor couldn't be bothered to care about how they calculated the points. She only had one goal, which was to go to Brinset Island, go to Chiochio, and rob a large amount of spirit energy. At that time, whether or not those 3 pitiful spirit realms could continue to exist for a long time would depend on her mood after sitting there for another 2 hours. The main referee, Elder Hong, finally personally walked onto the arena and said to everyone with a smile, after everyone's non-stop efforts, the 30 teams participating in the finals have finally been decided. Elder Hong, let's take a day off for the finals and continue the day after tomorrow. A Moonlight Academy student couldn't help but shout. He really couldn't take it anymore. After so many consecutive days of competition, today was still the kind of free selection. Their Moonlight Academy was really unlucky. They had been selected for as many as 3 rounds, and no one knew how they managed to survive the last round. Those bastards, bullying the weak and fearing the strong. They only knew how to find trouble with their Moonlight Academy. Why didn't they go and compete with the top academies? Elder Hong smiled good-naturedly and said, "Don't worry, the mentors have already considered this point. We'll give everyone a day off tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, I'll let all of you participate in the final competition in high spirits," Elder Hong said with a smile. The final competition this time is different from the previous competitions. Elder Hong stretched out his hand and waved, causing a piece of paper that was filled with the rules of the final competition to appear in his hand, and then he lightly shook it before it appeared before everyone. After a discussion among the top 10 academies of the 6 prefectures, we've decided to let everyone participate in a grand final competition. Everyone was speechless. Looks like we still have to thank you. There are 3 stages in this round's final round. First, test his cultivation base. Secondly, we will test your mystic sense or spiritual sense. Thirdly, this is the most important event. The competition will release all kinds of birds in the sky above the arena. You will need to use your mystic sense to control them. Chapter 2010. The competition is very simple. The person who obtains the most birds will win the final round. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Zhou Danjin slapped his thigh and stood up, howling, "Everyone, isn't this strange competition a bit too much of a joke?" Some of the instructors from the other schools all agreed. "Joke, this is way too much of a joke. In the past, the victor was determined by strength, but this year." Instructor Chao Dan from the Sunlight Academy also shook his head. "I've never heard of or seen such a competition before. What's the point of testing cultivation and consciousness? Isn't this just empty talk? Some people with lower cultivation bases and spiritual senses may not necessarily be unable to defeat others with their own strength, right? We're purely testing cultivation and consciousness this time." An instructor from the Dawn Academy said sternly, "We can't borrow any external power. Isn't this a true demonstration of our own strength?" Arbor turned her head in amusement and glanced at Zhou Danjin. "Instructor, your crow's beak hit the nail on the head." The instructors at the top of the 6 prefectures were indeed starting to feel restless. It was a pity that no one of her age could compare to her in terms of cultivation and consciousness. Arbor shook her head. She didn't know if she was pitying the instructors of the Dawn Academy for being unable to do anything to her in the end, or if she was laughing at their stupidity. The first step of the final round is to test cultivation. Instructor Chao Dan said exasperatedly, "What's the use of just testing cultivation? There are many people whose cultivation and strength aren't on the same level. Then how can we? Where's the person who killed my son?" A sudden roar interrupted Chao Dan's ramblings. Everyone looked up in shock and saw a hale and hearty old man leading 40 or so spirit masters of the 7th level of the spirit realm into the air above the arena. The old man's face was slightly twisted as his gaze swept up and down the arena. "Where are the people from the top schools? Hurry up and come out to meet your deaths." Arbor was a bit startled and stared blankly for a moment. She couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Who is this old man looking for?" Qi Xian and the others were speechless. It turned out that after this little guy killed Zhao Li, he completely forgot about this person. It should be Zhao Li's father. Mata couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. "Jojo, don't you remember that Zhao Li from Flying Flower Academy, the one who ambushed us from behind?" With such a vivid description, Arbor immediately remembered. He nodded and said, "So it's him." What was going on? After killing a young one, the old one actually came knocking on his door? Prince Amo reached out and held her little hand. Arbor turned and winked at him, telling him not to worry. Then, he left his seat and walked towards Zhao Li's father. You must be Zhao Li's father. Zhao Li's father coldly glared at the little girl in front of him. He was so angry that his teeth itched. The little girl's calm and composed expression was really eye-catching. He couldn't wait to pounce on the girl in front of him and tear her to shreds. Then, he would grind her bones and scatter her ashes to dispel the hatred in his heart. Zhao Li was his precious only son. You're here for revenge? Arbor hooked her little finger at Zhao Li's father expressionlessly. Come, your son will have company on the road to the Yellow Springs. All the teachers and students were speechless. Ignorant child, you've gone too far. The sixth watch ended. Chapter 2011. Zhao He was enraged. A streak of spirit energy flew out, sweeping towards Arbor like a poisonous snake. Mo Yin's eyes were filled with anger. She leapt up, flying to Arbor's side in an instant. With a flick of her sleeve, Zhao He's spirit energy was sent back the way it came, being repelled by a mighty force. Zhao He was shocked. He never thought that a spirit energy that seemed to be as light as a feather from a young man would be able to completely defeat him. In other words, with his decades of cultivation, he couldn't even last a single move from this young man. Impossible. He must have underestimated his opponent too much. Zhao He raised his hand and roared at the 40 or so 7th level spirit masters behind him. Stop them! His subordinates quickly moved forward, stopping the people from the elite academy. Zhao He's palms ignited with raging flames. His body twisted in midair, 2 balls of fire in his hands, fiercely slamming down towards Arbor's head. Huh! A strange look flashed through Prince Mo's eyes. A cluster of black flames floated up from his fingertips, but it was only a wisp. Zhao He suddenly realized that the raging flames in his palms were extinguished bit by bit, until the fire spirit disappeared from his hands. Zhao He didn't know that this was an instinctive fear of the sacred fire that all fire spirits in the world had. Once the sacred fire was released, no one could resist it. A huge force suddenly appeared in front of Zhao He. Before Zhao He could make a sound, he felt a huge force. Zhao He couldn't control himself and flew out at a very strange speed. Miss Qiao didn't have a chance to make a move from beginning to end. She raised her head and silently looked at Mo Yin, thinking, that bastard Zhao Li has his father's support, but she also has her husband's support. Who doesn't have relatives and friends? The little girl secretly rolled her eyes. At this time, Zhao He's outer clothes had been burned by Mo Yin's black flames. The black flames were like an evil dragon, suddenly rushing up Zhao He's body and tightly wrapping around him. Zhao He was shocked to find that the fire spirit in his body had actually disappeared. How could he dare to hesitate? He hurriedly tore off his outer robe and threw it on the ground. In the blink of an eye, a brocade robe was burned to ashes by the black flame. Zhao He looked at Mo Yin in bewilderment. If he hadn't activated his defensive barrier before attacking the little girl, he might have been the one to be burned to ashes. Zhao He's body trembled, and his legs involuntarily took half a step back. You? Who are you? Impossible. According to his information, the little girl who killed his precious son was simply a little ant who came from the lower star field to the Shuntian prefecture. She had only stayed in the Shuntian prefecture for half a year. But the man beside her? However, it made him instinctively feel a trace of fear that Zhao He was very clear that he couldn't see through this young man's cultivation. How could this man be so strong? Was he really from the lower star field? What made Zhao He collapse the most was that of the 40 or so 7th level spirit masters he had brought, half of them had been killed by the people from the top academy. The remaining 20 or so 7th level spirit masters didn't dare to continue fighting and quickly retreated to Zhao He's side. Cough, cough, cough. Zhao He clutched his chest and stared at the people from Arbor in shock. You guys. Chapter 2012. It was hard to believe. Not only were these ants from the lower star domain arrogant, but they were also able to beat up so many of his 7th rank spirit masters in one go. What kind of strength was this? Zhao, he scanned the people from the top academies with lingering fear. He didn't know that there were several spirit supremacies and immortal supremacies among the people from the top academies. If it weren't for the fact that these great gods were afraid that the heavenly Tao would come looking for trouble, they would have only hesitated to make a move. At this moment, not even half of Zhao He's people would be left. If little Tai Sui and the others got serious, Zhao He wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being killed, even if he brought hundreds or thousands of great spirit masters with him. In the face of absolute strength, Zhao He could only bow his head. If he wanted to live, he had to bow his head as soon as possible. When he thought of his only son, Zhao He's heart felt uneasy again. No way. He couldn't just abandon his son like this. Zhao Li had died an innocent death. He had to take justice back from this indifferent girl. Even if he couldn't take it back, he had to take a bite out of that girl. Zhao Li was about to step forward to pester her when he heard Mo Lian say coldly, "Take care of him." Yes. 4 or 5 shadow guards immediately appeared behind her. Under Tong's lead, they used their spirit power to lock the shocked Zhao He in place. They dragged along a few of Zhao He's disciples and immediately disappeared in front of everyone. Miss Qiao blinked, then shook Missouri Lian's wrist. Who is he? How come I've never seen him before? He's called Tong, someone the Emperor sent over. Let's use him first. Currently, he was still lacking manpower. When he returned to the Divine Prefecture, he could slowly replenish them. Arbor nodded. Oh, Jojo, don't worry. Mo Lian raised a hand to touch her cheek. I can take care of these idle people. Arbor couldn't be bothered with Zhao He's matter. Since Prince Mo had taken care of everything for her, Miss Qiao was naturally happy to be idle. Lian, that person called Tong, was sent over by the Emperor of the Divine Prefecture? Mo Lian nodded. Reliable? I don't know yet. Mo Lian shook her head. But for now, he's obedient and hasn't caused me any trouble. Oh, Arbor said. Okay. After Zhao He's group was dragged away, the interrupted competition finally returned to normal. It was only on the surface that he looked calm. As for the people's hearts, they looked at Mo Lian with eyes full of stormy waves. Arbor was too lazy to care. The first event of the finals will be held in the afternoon. You can go back to the inn and rest for the first half of the day. Everyone was speechless. Isn't this competition of yours a bit too tight? She hated that she couldn't even use the time to eat and sleep. In just a few days, he had to fight so many matches. The intensity was high, and the strength of his opponents was high. Many people couldn't hold on any longer. Now that they heard that they could only rest for half a day, no one grumbled anymore. They immediately pulled their teams and hurried back to the inn. Are you kidding? Zhou Danjin said indignantly. This year's competition is simply a mess. I wonder who's the one who keeps coming up with these lousy ideas. They're just trying to fool people. Little Fatty and the others comforted Instructor Zhou, then returned to Onping Inn with the other instructors. Arbor didn't care. Chapter 2013. It didn't matter if she rested or not. It was all the same to her anyway. She wasn't tired at all. It didn't matter if she rested or not. Zhou Danjin brought the students back to Onping Inn to rest. They planned to have lunch together. When Arbor returned to the inn, Mo Lian pulled her back to her room to sleep. Miss Qiao didn't feel sleepy at all. Although they had been rowdy the entire night last night, she could be considered to have slept for a while as she leaned on Mo Lian's body intermittently. Hubby is sleepy. Mo Lian pulled her small hand as they trotted upstairs. Leaving behind a bunch of people who were crying piteously for food, he anxiously watched their backs as they left, secretly grinding his teeth. Waiter, bring out whatever food you have. Qi Xianxian helplessly watched the couple leave. She could only summon the waiter in the inn. Mai Qiao's section break, 90,000 miles away from the border city of the Divine Land. Inside the Pangu clan's camp in the Aurora Sandland, a woman's painful howls could be heard. Princess Jing held the brush in one hand and put the finishing touches on the drawing paper. Then, she raised her head and glanced at the maidservant beside her. What's wrong? Third miss, you haven't recovered yet? Xian Lan bowed to her respectfully. Third Miss needs some time to be reborn. Uffed. Princess Jing sneered. She threw her brush onto the washers and said indifferently, Her? Reborn? Don't joke around, Xian Lan. She's just a clown at best. Xian Lan lowered her head and didn't say anything. Jing Linyao didn't want to pursue the matter. She lifted the curtain and strode out. Come with me. Her tent wasn't close to third Miss Jing Minyao's tent. When Jing Linyao slowly walked over, she happened to see Wang Limeng carrying a lunchbox and walking towards her step by step. When Wang Limeng saw Jing Linyao, she immediately bit her lips and hid the hatred in her eyes. She smiled and nodded at Jing Linyao. Your Highness, are you here to see San? Jing Linyao nodded with a smile and strode into Jing Minyao's tent. At a glance, she saw Jing Minyao lying on the bed like a skinny monkey. Her eyes were fixed on Jing Linyao, who had just crossed the threshold. Are you here to laugh at me? Jing Minyao opened her mouth, and her voice was unbelievably hoarse. She wanted to slap the bed under her with all her might, but she didn't even have the strength to raise her hand to slap it. Jing Linyao suppressed the smile in her eyes. Looking at her foolish and fearless younger sister, she lightly said, Third younger sister, big sister advises you not to get angry. It took a lot of effort for the soul congregation bell to gather your soul and allow you to open your eyes again. You have to cherish it. You, Jing Minyao trembled with anger. If you hadn't schemed against me, would I have ended up in such a miserable state? Jing Linyao pursed her lips and snickered. Third younger sister, you're wrong to say that. Big sister came to check on your body out of goodwill. Why did you bite me? Get out of my sight. Jing Minyao struggled to throw an empty porcelain bowl at the head of the bed. However, she didn't have the strength to do so. Her head tilted and fell heavily on the bed. Jing Linyao's eyes flashed. Chapter 2014. With a faint smile, Jing Linyao said to Wang Limeng, Madam, if you have time, you should spend more time with my sister and persuade her to control her temper. What do you mean? Outsiders are not like our family. As her elder sister, I have to give in to her in everything and accommodate her in all aspects. But what about outsiders? For example, that crown princess, was she let go of my sister? Madam, you don't know how to teach your sister. Jing Linyao smiled with a trace of coldness. After she goes out, there will be outsiders to teach her. Don't you think so? Old Mistress Jing was so angry that she fell backwards. Her beautiful face flushed red. Patriarch is here. An announcement interrupted everyone's conversation in the tent. Jing Minyao angrily punched the bed and shouted at her father who was walking in, Father, elder sister is bullying me and my mother again. Panga clan's patriarch, Jing Jue, was over 70 years old, but his body was very strong and he walked very fast. As soon as he entered, he couldn't help but frown at his eldest daughter, Jing Linyao. What are you doing here? Jing Linyao secretly sneered, but her face showed a very gentle smile. Father, after more than 10 days of soul gathering by the soul gathering bell, my sister finally woke up, but her body is still very weak. As her elder sister, I naturally have to visit her. It's just that my sister has always misunderstood me. Jing Linyao smiled. I didn't say anything. I just wanted Madam to teach her well, but she said that I bullied her? Father, after all, this is a lesson learned. If Min Min continues to be so arrogant, she will kick a hard iron plate like this time, and there will be no turning back. Shut up. Wang Limeng was furious. This woman kept on cursing her daughter. Did she want her Min Min to die again? Jing Linyao innocently looked at Mrs. Jing, Wang Limeng. She then turned her head to look at her family head, Jing Zhe, who was looking at her thoughtfully. She smiled faintly. If there's nothing else, you can go back first. Jing Zhe said coldly, looking at Princess Jing without any fatherly warmth. Jing Linyao nodded obediently and bowed to Jing clan head. Daughter will take her leave first. Master. Just as she stepped out of the tent, she heard Madame Jing sobbing. Look at how eldest Miss is behaving. She doesn't put me in her eyes. Father, It's Jing Linyao who hurt me. Jing Linyao, that woman. Father, I want to kill her, I want to kill. A cough, 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 cough. Jing Minyao's body twitched violently. Her mother, Madame Jing, was scared out of her wits. She hurriedly rushed up to hug her daughter and shouted, Min, 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 don't get emotional. Didn't you hear what our families wish, doctor? After using the soul-gathering bell to return to your soul, you must maintain a stable state of mind for the next 15 days. Don't get too excited. Otherwise, even if you succeed in the future, there will be repercussions in your brain. I can't control my emotions. Jing Minyao screamed, Father, kill Jing Linyao for me. Kill her. It's her who hurt me. It's her. She must be the one who told me about Prince Mo's consort. It's her who led me to provoke that witch, that bitch. Ah. Jing Minyao screamed on the bed with a twisted face. Chapter 2015. Old Mistress Jing was so frightened that she quickly pressed down on her daughter's body. Daughter, don't be so noisy. If you do this, you'll only be harming yourself. Mother, I'm in so much pain, so much pain. Min, where does it hurt? Mother, I'm in pain all over, so painful, so painful. Madame Jing held her down, wiping her tears as she said, Min, bear with it a little more. The soul congregation bell is like this. After it successfully gathers the soul, you won't fully recover immediately. You'll need time to recuperate. Don't make a fuss anymore. Jing Min Yao's body twitched, her face twisted. Clan head Jing glanced at her, sighed, and asked two servants to help Madame Jing hold down Jing Min Yao's limbs. Jing Lin Yao stood outside the tent. Hearing this, she couldn't help but smile faintly, turned and left. There was nothing good to hear after this. It was naturally the drama that had been going on all along. Madame Jing was just going to sue Princess Jing. Jing Lin Yao curled her lips and slowly fiddled with her fingers. She slowly walked towards her own tent. If she was so easily defeated by that woman's pillow talk, then she wouldn't be Jing Lin Yao, the only Princess Jing in the entire Jing family. Clan head Jing walked out of his daughter's tent with his hands behind his back. His face still didn't look good. His face was calm as he walked silently for a while. Behind him was an old servant who was holding a large brocade box in his hand. Jing Qian, this one is here. You have to keep an eye on the soul congregation bell. It only has one use left. It would be a lie if Clan head Jing said he didn't feel the pain of using up the soul congregation bell for no reason because of his daughter's matter. Yes, Clan head. Also, send some people down to investigate the background of that crown princess of the Divine Land. How did an ant for the lower star field kill his daughter Min? Yes, Clan head Jing sneered. Crown princess of the Divine Land? A woman from the lower star field is destined to not be recognized by the great emperor. The crown prince of the Divine Land is really a capricious person. He actually got married in the lower star field. If this news were to spread to the Divine Prefecture, it would definitely shock the entire nation. I saw Ren's section break. The next day, during the morning court session, the Sangzhou Emperor happily announced something to his subjects. Sangzhou's fourth majesty entered the imperial ancestral temple and was chosen by the Devil Monarch's inheritance. He was about to inherit the Devil Monarch's bloodline and all the martial arts inheritance. Hearing this, all the officials beamed with joy and congratulated His Majesty on his success. The Sangzhou Great Emperor laughed loudly. Indeed, for over 1,000 years, ever since the founding emperor inherited the bloodline of the Demon Emperor, every generation after that had been filled with hope. They hoped that their children would be able to inherit the bloodline of the Demon Emperor. However, things did not go as they wished. Every time, they ended in failure. How could he not be happy that Sangzhou's great emperor had come? I plan to confer the title of Prince Chun and bestow the land of Huaqing to the south of Sangzhou to him. Your Majesty is wise and mighty. Although Prince Chun is young, he has inherited the bloodline of the Devil Emperor. His future is limitless. Whether it is for the country or for the people, Your Majesty's decision is a good one. I believe that Prince Chun will definitely be a rare talent who can stabilize the country in the future. Ronli took 2 steps forward and knelt down. Father, Seer is still in seclusion. Please leave the housewarming matter to me. Chapter 2016. The second prince and the third prince hurriedly took a few steps forward, prostrated themselves on the ground, and said in unison, "We are also willing to help." The Sangzhou emperor looked at his 3 sons with a gratified expression and nodded happily. "Since you are so considerate, I will leave the matter of moving to you." "Yes, yes." His 3 sons answered in succession. No matter what they thought in their hearts, they looked quite normal on the surface. Each of their faces was filled with joy that they were happy for their younger brother and proud of their younger brother. However, no one knew whether the depths of his heart were bleeding or not. After all, the land of Huaqin in the south of Sangzhou was a real fertile land. With this piece of land, Duan Xiaoxi would become one of the wealthiest people in Sangzhou for no reason. In the future, he would probably have cramps in his hands, even if he counted the taxes he paid. "Your Majesty," an imperial censor stepped forward and braced himself to ask, "Your Majesty has already conferred the title of Prince Chun. According to the ancestral rules, even if he doesn't move to the fief immediately, he has to move out of the palace and live elsewhere. If Prince Chun continues to stay in Taiji Palace, wouldn't it be a little inappropriate?" The Sangzhou emperor waved his hand and said, "Xiaoxi has just returned. Let him live in the palace for a while." Since he had said so, no one dared to provoke the Sangzhou emperor. The emperor was very happy. It was rare for his son to be so promising. He inherited the bloodline of the demon emperor when he came back. This was no joke. All the ministers silently thought in their hearts, "Prince Chun is probably going to have a meteoric rise." The second prince and the third prince were both in their early 30s, and neither of them had been conferred the title of prince by the emperor. How old was Duan Xiaoxi? In the upper 3 provinces, where people generally live for a long time, Duan Xiaoxi was really pitifully young. Today, the emperor was in a good mood. All the ministers felt that even if they reported a few sad political affairs, the emperor would not be too harsh on them because he was in a good mood. Thus, the morning court session ended in a harmonious manner. After the court was dismissed, the second prince and the third prince left the town hall. They hurriedly caught up with Crown Prince Rong Li and asked with a smile, "Eldest brother, this matter of moving is an order from father. It's better that we do it as soon as possible." Rong Li glanced at them and nodded. "Let's go." The 3 of them called for a carriage and arrived at South Chiao Hall. The servants in the hall had already received the news and knew that the great emperor had personally given the order to move their masters. They had already packed their masters' clothes and necessities and had been waiting for a long time. Rong Li looked around and nodded. "Is there anything that hasn't been sorted out? Let's move over in the afternoon." The little eunuch had a troubled look on his face. This servant does not dare to enter the master's study. Rong Li nodded and walked slowly towards the study. He said calmly, "Since it's not easy to tidy it up, let's move the things in the study, including the tables and chairs. That way, we won't leave behind anything important." Everyone was overjoyed when they heard this. With the crown prince's guidance, everyone immediately went to the study to move things. When they moved to the big Nama desk, 4 or 5 people felt that it was not strong enough to carry it, so they went to find some helpers to carry it. When they walked to the door, the big desk scraped against the door, and they quickly stabilized it. Dong! A dark drawer suddenly fell from under the desk, and a painting scroll rolled out from it. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.